packed and decided to have a night on the town with my best friend. The plan was to day drink then head out to some local strip clubs. I visited Backpage.com and found a stripper named Passion. Her advertisement said she was only in town for the weekend. We messaged back and forth all day. My plan was to visit the club she was going to be working later that night. Then if I liked her, to pay for some sex. Tim, who at this time I considered my best friend, wanted to start the day off drinking at 1 p.m. So we visited a place called the Three-Legged Dog. A spot known for its wide array of beers and the best bacon cheeseburgers. We arrived at the spot around 1:30 p.m. and started the festivities. I don't recall exactly how many drinks I had, but by 7 p.m. I was wasted. By 10 p.m. I has successfully linked up with Passion and talked her into coming back to my apartment with me for some private dances. In hindsight, I was way too loose that night. I was carrying over $2,000 cash on me and been flashing money the entire night. I am now certain that this is what caused the events that followed. At 11:30 we left the club with Passion and her friend, whose name I was too drunk to remember, walking back to my car, which was parked 4 blocks away. The streets were extremely busy for a Thursday night, and Passion was having a hard time with her small suitcase that she rolled along carrying all her stripper attire inside. Tim and I were both way too drunk to drive, so I let Passion drive the 13 blocks to my apartment complex. When we arrived at my apartment, things went as expected and Passion was soon naked in my bed. Another 2 hours had passed, when I need to use the bathroom. Walking out of my room and toward the front of the apartment, I thought I heard someone outside the door. But it was a Thursday night and people here are known to party, so there was always foot traffic at my apartment complex. Standing there taking a piss, I hear a soft knock at the door. It was faint, but it was a knock. By this time it's 2 a.m. and I'm not expecting any visitors. So I quietly walk up to the door and look out the peephole. I could feel the presence of someone on the other side of the door, but looking through the peephole couldn't see anyone. Then the scratching started, but still I could see nothing. Next there was man's voice. "I know you're there, open the door." I was not thinking straight at all because I should have just called the police. Instead, drunk and high, I said, "Get the fuck away from my door." The sound stopped and I heard heavy footsteps walking away from the door. Standing there frozen, not in fear but just trying to process what happened. My mind justified the events as someone had went to the wrong door. My voice must have scared them off. When I entered my room, Passion, who to this day I can't remember her real name, was sitting on the bed, fully dressed. She asked what was going on, and pretended to be worried. Minutes later she said she needed to use the bathroom and left the room. The sound of my deadbolt unlocking was the first indication that trouble was headed my way. The problem was I was so high and drunk. My mind was telling me this bitch had just unlocked the door, but my goddamned body wouldn't react. By the time I got to the kitchen, a man was walking into my apartment. He was wearing a Barack Obama mask, just like the one in the picture I emailed you. In his hand was a 9mm caliber gun with a silencer. The sounds of a bullet coming out a silenced gun is something I will never forget. Then there was the pain of the bullet going through my right thigh. Instantly I dropped to the ground, and he demanded the money. Time seemed to slow down as he pointed the gun at my head. Then Passion said, "Don't kill him, just get the money," pointing to the stack of $100 bills on the kitchen counter. I felt a puddle of blood beginning to accumulate beneath me. They stole my iPhone, money, and a fake gold chain I wore that night, and then both left. Keeping pressure on my leg, I slid over to the phone in my kitchen and dialed 911. By the time ambulance and police arrived, I was feeling dizzy and lightheaded. I remember parts of the ride to the hospital, before I passed out. When I awoke, Tim was in the ER. He explained that he took the other girl to get something to eat, and when they returned, there was blood everywhere. He thought I was dead, and when he called my cell phone and could not get an answer, he freaked out. I was lucky the bullets just missed my femoral artery and went clean through my leg. Told the police it was a home invasion. I did not mention anything about meeting a stripper from Backpage. Cocaine is a hell of a drug. I have done many stupid things while I was high, but this story is so far-fetched you probably won't believe it. However, every freaking word of it is true. In 2010 I was having the time of my life. I obtained a city construction contract that made me a millionaire. I bought my dream car, the H1 Hummer, and I just partied my ass off. One night came up with this brilliant idea of ordering a prostitute from Backpage.com. For those of you who are not familiar with Backpage, it's similar to Craigslist, but in the year 2010 it was more underground and people really just used it for ordering sex. I mean, some asshole probably tried to sell his sofa and TV on the site, but people who were in the know ordered prostitutes from this website. Anyway, so I'm high, and decided to surf around Backpage looking for someone to call. That's when I stumble upon the transsexual section of the website. Fuck you, don't judge me. Anyway, I find this beautiful transsexual named Haley. She was amazing and had a little extra, if you know what I mean. So I called the number and arranged for her to come by my condo in the French Quarters. When Haley arrived, she was just as beautiful as her pictures. She was cool, funny, and just a great person. Honestly, I completely forgot that we were supposed to be having sex. We just hung at my house, smoking weed and talking. 3 hours passed like it was nothing, and Haley didn't ask for any money, so I figured she was having just as good of a time as I was. We walked a few blocks down the street from my house and grabbed a hamburger, then bar hopped for a few hours before heading back to my place. The evening was going so great I completely forgot that this was really a man. 8 hours had passed and all we did was hang out, laugh and have fun. Haley finally asked if I wanted to have sex. I truly didn't. As we sat on my sofa, she pulled out her phone and opened the calculator application. I watched as she tallied up some number. With a serious look on her face, she said, the price for the time we spent was $2,800, which was at a discount price because she liked me. Now, this has just blown my high. My mind calculated that the hourly rate was near $350 per hour for the last 8 hours. Keep in mind I was paying for everything we did during the past 8 hours. So naturally I did what any businessman would do. I took out my calculator and receipts and began to deduct the price of cocaine, weed, beer, gas, and food from her asking price. This did not make Haley very happy and she begins to get a little aggressive. Keep in mind that Haley, although she had breast and soft skin, she was a man with a penis. I was reminded of that when Haley grabbed my arm and gave it a tight squeeze. Now for the record, I am not a fighter at all. I have never been. My entire life I have gotten my ass kicked. I evolved and developed a unique ability to talk my way out of dangerous situations. This was no exception. My number that I was willing to pay was $1,800 and that had to include some sex. Haley thought about it for a minute, then did something that completely fucked my head up. She nodded her head up and down, physically gesturing yes, while the word no came out her mouth. Then she began this weird, kind of double talking as if she was having a conversation with herself. She mumbled a few words, then raised her fists to fight me. Like I said earlier, I cannot fight my way out a paper bag, so I proceeded to take a vicious ass whooping from this beautiful man. He punched me in the stomach several times, causing me fold over, then landed a shot to my jaw, knocking me to the floor. As I lay on the floor in pain, she unzipped her jeans, pulling out her dick and pissed on my pants legs while demanding her money. Oh my god, I had just got my ass kicked in my living room by a transsexual prostitute, who then pissed on me. I gave her the $2,800 and begged her to just leave, and she did. I couldn't call the popo and tell them I was just beat up by a tranny prostitute in my own home. Haley is still on Backpage, and to her credit her hourly rate for an out-call visit is $350 per hour. I guess it was sometime in the summer of '07. I was trolling Backpage and came across a new lady, maybe mid-30s, homely but cute, staggeringly massive boobs. I contacted her and we actually IM'd and texted back and forth for a few days, and eventually set up an hour meeting at her place. Her last IM to me read, "BTW, I'm kinky if that's okay." I responded that it was fine, because I was too. I pull up to her place, beautiful duplex in a really nice area. Kinda like those to catch a predator areas. A little too nice. I pull in her driveway, and goddamned if there isn't one of those big white Ford Econoline vans parked right in the shared driveway. Tinted windows. Dude just sitting in it. Total cop mobile, right? I look up, and make eye contact with the dude, and I freak, pull out and bail. I do a couple circles around the block, and when I come back, the dude is gone. Call me a dumbass if you like, but I just drove 75 miles to get here. So, I'm either getting some, or I'm getting popped by the popo. I let my testicles descend from my throat, pull back in her driveway, ring the bell, and lo and behold, she answers. Cute, thick, MILF, massive tankers, peeking her head through the door. She rushes me inside and quickly shuts the door, since she was almost butthouse naked. We greet, she tosses me a beer, and we sit there on her couch and BS for like 45 minutes. She was cool as hell, but I was still waiting for the cops to kick down the door at any moment, like they were just waiting for me to slip up and say something. That was until it happened. Out of goddamn nowhere, this pleasantly plump 35-year-old housewife leaps through the air, straddles me, pinning me down on the couch, and starts licking my goddamn face rapidly and repeatedly like a spastic St. Bernard who ain't seen its owner in 6 months. Just lapping me up like a water bowl. I don't know WTF to do, because I don't know WTF is going on. My face is soaked, I'm disgusted yet furiously turned on at the same time, and I don't know why. Then, she starts shoving her tongue in my mouth, and I'm getting ready for what I supposed was going to be DFK, but instead, she starts licking my goddamned gums. Furiously, licking my gums. All over, top and bottom, above, below, and behind the teeth. Full-scale dental deep cleaning. Again, disgusted, yet somehow turned on by this. Mercifully, after I'm struggling to catch my breath, she gets up, and starts shoving me into her bedroom. Pushes me down on the bed, pulls out handcuffs from her drawer, cuffs me to her bed, ties my legs down with neckties, slips on a monkey blanket, basically fucking rapes me, and then it got weird. She got herself off, got me off, pulls off the rubber, empties it into her mouth, and as I'm looking up at her, she THBBBBTS snowballs it out all over me, stands over top straddling me, and says, and I'll never forget these words, "It's okay, I'll wash it off," and then goddamned pisses all over me. Like a fucking racehorse, just flushing herself out. I'm like freaking the hell out, but can't say anything because it's in my best interest to keep my lips closed until Secretariat finishes her morning expulsion. She finishes, smiling her ass off. I'm covered with a mix of my spooge and her piss, laying in a soaked bed, terrified. Her response, "Yeah, I'm definitely a little kinky." Like the classy damsel she clearly was, she offered to let me shower. I head off to her bathroom, dripping, cold, confused. I couldn't shower, I just wanted to leave, fast. I dry myself off. As I shudder while typing this, get dressed, and left quickly, not saying more than a few words. I mentioned at the beginning it was summer, right? Hot as hell outside, so that's not helping the piss that's in my hair. I roll up on a quick trip, buy 4 bottles of water and a travel pack of Alka-Seltzer. I use 3 bottles to hose myself down in the middle of the parking lot, and the other to gargle with Alka-Seltzer. Something in the combination of being unexpectedly snowballed, pissed on by a fat housewife, 90-degree heat, cold water being dumped on my head, and a mouthful of effervescent antacid, caused me to Ralph everywhere, capping off the worst 2 hours of my life. Now please leave me alone while I go cry in a corner. Do you want more stories? We have more for your listening pleasure. Feel free to comment, and please subscribe to the channel to show your support.
Cause the saints don't mind clapping their hands. They don't mind patting their feet. They don't mind dancing. Hallelujah. I want you to come on in the balcony, down here on the main floor. Put your hands together. Let's praise God for a minute. Come on.
I was born and raised in Mississippi. Southern Black Baptist Church all the way. Man, I remember as a kid, and especially as a teenager, I went to Sunday school. Then I went to church. Then on Monday nights, I went to Bible study. And on Wednesday nights, I went to Bible study. And then Friday nights, we had a retreat at the church every Friday evening. That good, strong upbringing led me to Jackson State University, where I graduated with a degree in political science. And from there, I moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and took a job working for the mayor's office. While in Memphis, that's when things in my life started to take a bit of a downturn. And I had my encounter with these black-eyed kids. Initially, things were going pretty well. I was working for one of the deputy mayors, and life was looking good. And although I graduated with a degree in political science, I didn't really understand politics. So when I was living in Memphis, it was my first time actually seeing and understanding how true power works. I did my best to keep with my family's upbringing and traditions. So the first thing I did when I moved to Memphis was ask around about a good church. I found one called Mount Zion. Started visiting there religiously. So time passes, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 8 months. And I start to infiltrate the power structure of Memphis. And that's when I realized there was really no duality to it. You see, I found myself trading off my Wednesday night Bible study for Wednesday night socializing. Hanging out, having drinks, talking about politics and what was going on. And that was just the beginning. Then I met Fred. I'll never forget it. The very first conversation I had with this man, his exact words were, "Those who sin together, win together." That was exactly how he started his conversation with me and 2 other young men who were at the bar. Fred turned out to be a pretty powerful dude in Memphis. Multiple city contracts, 30% of the sanitation business, paper supply, uniforms for the prisons, and even parking meter business. I can honestly say to you that once I met Fred and started hanging out with him, I believe that really started my down spiral. I don't want to make this sound completely and totally negative because there was a lot that I learned from this man. But I had moved away from the spiritual path that was laid before me. Started going down some pretty dark roads. His slogan, those who sin together, win together, he really lived by it. Although Fred was married, we spent night after night in the strip clubs. And we're not talking about regular strip clubs. We're talking about clubs where the girls were prostitutes. I traveled around with him on the weekends on his private jet with his friends going down to Miami, New Orleans, Vegas. And these guys were wild. Drugs, alcohol, you name it, they had it. And you know the craziest thing was? While hanging out with Fred and his homeboys, my career skyrocketed. I went from working for one of the deputy mayors to actually being a deputy mayor. Talk about rapidly amassing power. In 3 years, I went from a nobody shuffling paperwork to one of the most powerful people in the city of Memphis. With direct access to the mayor, the governor, state representatives. Shit, I probably could have got to the president if I wanted to. It was at the peak of my career plateau when I had my black-eyed kid encounter. The mayor was running for re-election, and I had been tasked with organizing a fundraiser for him. So for 2 weeks, I had been working the phone, getting checks in the doors, and setting up all the arrangements for this fundraiser. The night of the event comes, and I'm stressed out, trying to make sure that everything goes well. The caterers are bringing in food through the back door. The flowers are coming in through the front door. There's not enough tablecloths. There's not enough chairs. I'm running around like a madman trying to make sure that everything is on point. And at the same time, I'm pissed off because I hired an event planner named Leslie to make sure everything went smooth. I had walked her out of the back door to give her a piece of my mind. I just wanted to let her know how disappointed I was in her performance. And as she and I exited the back door of the kitchen and stepped out into the alleyway behind the convention center, I realized that this woman already knew what I was about to say. So she cut me off and said, listen, I'm sorry about things not being in order. I'm going to fix it. We still got an hour and a half before the event starts and guests start arriving. By the time this event starts, everything will be in order. I promise you. Please, give me 35 minutes. She was begging with me, tears in her eyes. And so I told her, till I give you 25 minutes to get it together. And if not, you'll never work in this city again. She turned around and walked back into the door. And I kind of stood there leaning on the wall, searching my pockets for a cigarette. I had just found that cigarette, put it in my mouth, and was pulling my lighter out of my pocket when I heard what sounded like someone kicking a tin can coming down the alley. I look over to my left, and I see these two figures. At first, it was just silhouettes. But as they got closer, I realized that it was two kids. Now, these two boys had to be about 15, 16 years old. They had on black slacks, black shoes, white dress shirts, and a black blazer. They were dressed as if they were literally going to my event. The odd thing was, as they walked, there was this synchronized motion, both of them with their heads down. I light my cigarette, and as they get closer, I'm thinking to myself, two 16-year-old boys walking up on me in a back alley. And if they was dressed a little bit differently, I would worry, but I don't think this is anything to worry about. But man, I was totally wrong. I'm puffing my cigarette, and they get within 10 feet of me. And when I tell you these two boys lift their heads up, and I get a glimpse at their eyes, they're black. Not like black contact lenses, but I mean completely black. And then for a second, I stopped focusing on their eyes and started to look at their faces. They were identical twins. And I don't mean these were some ugly, unattractive young men. These were two young white boys. Looked like the Jonas Brothers or something, except for they had black eyes. Looking at these two kids was shocking. And I think they enjoyed the fact that they scared me, because they both had a little bit of a smile on their face. That's when one of them says, "Will you let us in?" By now, I'm still trying to take a puff of this cigarette, but my hand is literally shaking. It's sad for me to say this, but I was so afraid that I didn't even say a word. The other one then said, "Will you let us in?" I don't know if my brain was still trying to process what was going on, or fear had completely paralyzed me. I would like to believe that my brain was stuck in some kind of mud puddle because these two black-eyed kids were standing in front of me asking about going into my fundraiser event. But once I got over the initial shock of the encounter, I looked at them and said, yo, what the fuck is wrong with your eyes? And no, you can't come into my event. Get the fuck out of here. Now that's when shit got even more creepy, because these two little motherfuckers started backing away from me. They didn't turn around and walk away. They backed away in synchronized steps in the fastest kind of fluttering motion I'd ever seen in my life, almost like something from a fucking ghost movie. I stand there and watch them back all the way up to the end of the alley to where they're out of my sight. And then I turn and go back into the venue. When I walk in the door, the event planner says, "Where have you been? The event has already started. They're looking for you. It's time to go on stage." And I tell her I was just outside smoking a cigarette. She said, "No, you weren't. I opened the door looking for you. You weren't there." And I was like, "No, I was standing right outside the back door smoking a cigarette." "No, you weren't," she insisted. That's when she handed me my index card and said, "You're 10 minutes late. Get your ass on stage. Everything is ready to go." Now, I don't know how this whole black-eyed kid thing works, if they're aliens or demons or ghosts or whatever. But all I know is somehow I lost 35 to 40 minutes of my time. I went on stage, made my introductions, collected my checks, and the event was a smash hit. But later when I got home, I couldn't sleep. All I could see was those freaky little Jonas Brother kids with the black eyes.
The Dark Waters channel is for entertainment purposes only. Although information in these stories can be traced back to relevant and true sources, Dark Waters strongly discourages its viewers, listeners, and subscribers from visiting the site of incidents and encounters discussed or revealed on the show. In other words, we will not be held responsible if you are attacked by a Dogman, molested by a Bigfoot, bitten by vampires, chased by chupacabras, abducted by aliens, accosted by the Men in Black, investigated or arrested by the local law enforcement, CIA, FBI, NSA, EPA, BLM, or another alphabet group, whether on U.S. soil or abroad. Thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the show.
I've been a realtor for the past 15 years. Got my start in San Diego. Made a shitload of money. After I made my goal of $3 million, my wife and I retired to a small town, 150 miles away from the U.S.-Mexican border. But I couldn't just give up my love of real estate. So I continued to take listings and sell properties. The only difference was that in this area, there were no beaches or high-rises. Here, there were nothing but broad swaths of land. And selling ranches is the name of the game. It took a while for me to get my first listing. I was a newbie in the area and people around here are not so trusting. But after 4 months of hanging out and a few political donations, I got my first listing, a 30-acre ranch that was bank-owned. Truthfully, I didn't need the money. I just loved the rush of working the deals. So when I got the information on this property, I was surprised. The place was damn near brand new. At least the house, I mean. It was built 5 years ago, and the property went into foreclosure 23 months after the permanent loan was put in place. So I'm thinking to myself, man, this should be an easy sale. And I decided to head up to the property to lay my eyes on it. I need to visualize myself selling this place. In order to get to the actual house itself, you had to turn off the highway onto this dirt road and travel a little less than a mile to get to the front gates. While on that dirt road, I realized that whoever built this house was a serious recluse. I mean, they must have wanted privacy. One of those off-the-grid types. There was no way I would have spent the type of money they did to live in such a desolate place. When I arrived at the front gate, I had to hop out and unlock it. This gate was massive, 9 feet tall, made of steel, and was beautiful. This family spared absolutely no expense on this house or this property. From the gate, I could see the house about 250 yards away. I drove right up to it, pulling up damn near at the front door. Typically, I do a walk around the property and take measurements. But there was a recent appraisal on a bank package, so luckily all I had to do was just go inside and see it for myself. Just as I was putting the key in the door, I heard what sounded like another vehicle coming up the road. Remember I told you about how desolate this place was? So I knew the only way somebody was coming down this road was they were headed to the property. And I finally was able to see the vehicle. It was a cop car. The vehicle pulled in the gate, and it's this female officer. She parks, exits the vehicle, starts eyeballing my real estate sign on the side of my car, then starts to ask me what I'm up to. To be honest with you, this was a tense moment, because she had her hand on the weapon the whole time. It took a while for her to relax. Then she started telling me about the place. She said it was owned by a man named Kevin Shields and his family. They built the place as an off-grid location. Then she goes on to tell me about the underground bunkers and all kind of other little crap that's associated with this property. It was during this conversation that I learned that Mr. Shields died from some kind of wild animal attack. He tried driving himself to the hospital and had a wreck on the roadway, flipping his vehicle over and dying. Then she goes on to tell me good luck with selling the place, and explains how there's lots of weird things that happen in the area. People are always reporting strange lights in the sky, hearing noises that sound like broken tornado sirens, and about these very large wolves. Diana, the officer, goes on to tell me that she was called out to the property one night when Mr. Shields was away on business. His wife and older sons were home alone. She said that when she arrived, they told her they thought a person was stalking the house, but whoever it was had run off. So she drove around the property in her vehicle to take a look around. And that's when she saw this huge wolf on all fours, walking in a dried up creek bed that runs along the west side of the property. She said other officers had been called out as well and witnessed these same large wolves. At this point in time, I'm starting to get freaked out, and I wanted to change the subject. So I asked her if she wouldn't mind joining me as I did a walk around through the house. As I walked into the house, I realized that it was still furnished. I mean, this family clearly had just picked up and left in a hurry. There were still plates and dishes in the cabinets. And Diane, she looked disturbed as she walked around inside the house. At that point, I started getting the feeling there was way more to the story than I was being told. 20 or 30 minutes had passed, and then she said something real freaky. She said, "We need to be out of here by dark." And that's when I noticed this panicked look on her face. So I took her advice, and we left. The property sat on the market for 3 months before I got one phone call. And this call was from a man out of Texas. And this guy was weird. He was an oil man. Said he needed a place to prepare for the end of days. I mean, he seemed like a real smart fellow, but he thought the apocalypse was coming like next week. 2 days later, I found myself out at the property with this guy we'll call Big Tex. Now, normally, I like to show properties in the morning time, but this particular case, we were forced to do it around 4 p.m. because he came into town late. By 5:30, we had gotten through the house itself, and he still wanted to see the bunker and food storage area, and the barn that was towards the back of the property. I tried my best to get him to agree to start again in the morning, but he had plans to get back on a plane that night. Now, this property has no utilities turned on, so when the sun went down, we were just working with the headlights from my car and handheld flashlights. But luckily, the sky was clear, and the moon provided good light. So we headed into the bunker and walked around a bit and then came out. I started getting that itchy feeling, like I can get this deal closed. So we were standing right in front of my car. I had the contract in my hand, $2.5 million at 6%. I'm talking about $150,000. If I can get Big Tex to sign on a dotted line, I get that money. And just as I handed him the pen, I hear this growl. I mean, this thing was loud and deep. Tex looks at me and said, "What the fuck was that?" Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, Diana was serious about these wolves. They got wolves out here. Then it growls again, but this time, the sound is coming from directly behind the vehicle. Tex and I jump in the vehicle and I start to pull off. By the time I made a complete U-turn and headed back towards the front gate, Tex has damn near jumped out of the front seat of the car and into the back seat. Now, I didn't see anything at that moment, but based on his reaction, I floored it, getting up to about 55 miles an hour, headed back to the front gate. When I arrived at the gate, Tex's upper body was in the back seat and his feet and legs were still in the front seat, and he was screaming. I hopped out of the car and swung the left side of the gate open, and when I turned around, that's when I first laid my eyes on these creatures. Back about 150 yards away and moving towards us was what looked like an animal running on 2 legs. Its motion was fluid. It wasn't labored at all. And this thing had a spring to its step, kind of like it was bouncing. For a few seconds I watched as this thing bounced back and forth, moving in my direction. Then I hopped back in the car and drove off, damn near ripping my bumper off as I hit the gate. Once we hit the highway, I found the gas station and pulled over. And I asked Tex if he was alright. But the look on this man's face let me know 2 things. Number one, I wasn't getting this commission. And then he saw something so bad that it probably was going to scar him for the rest of his life. After a few seconds of silence, Tex told me that as I was turning the car, he looked out of the passenger side window, trying to see what made the noise. And this creature he describes as a giant wolf had his face pressed right up against the glass. And it moved as the vehicle turned and kept pace. He was locked eye to eye with this thing for the entire time. He said the eyes were this yellow color, with the largest black pupils he'd ever seen. And as it bared its teeth, its nose and snout wrinkled and saliva dripped from its mouth. He demanded I take him back to the hotel. I absolutely knew there was no way I was going to be able to sell this property to him now. Showed it several other times after that, and made sure that I did it in the daytime, and I've never seen those creatures again. However, another realtor went out to the property at night, against my advice. Kelly is a young, ambitious woman. Dare I say, she's a true bitch. A country girl who wants to be like folks from the city. RB started when she tried to backdoor me with the bank and get the listing once it expired. Now, if you guys remember, I told you about this rush that I would get from doing real estate deals. Well, this is what I was talking about. All-out warfare, combat, protecting what's yours. Even though in this case this property was infested with walking wolves, I wasn't letting Kelly take the damn thing from me. Turns out, she wasn't able to get the listing. But what she did get was approval to do an open house. For those of you who don't know what open house is, imagine a party with lavish food and great drinks, all for the single purpose of selling the house. With this move, Kelly got her foot in the door, but she was trying to jam a damn arm in as well. And in true bitch fashion, Kelly calls me to gloat about it. Did Robert from the bank inform you that we're having an open house at the property, she said. I felt my blood pressure rising as she talked, and I played it cool, responding, congratulations, heaven knows it's a big deal for a young upstart realtor like you. Yeah, I know how to verbally punch back. But in my head, I was thinking, fuck you, bitch, I hate you. That's when she tells me she's turning utilities back on and gonna have a nighttime open house. I couldn't help but smile. Started spinning in my office chair. Really? That's going to be amazing. Please be sure to send me an invite to this. And that's how that conversation ended. A day later, I'm at the coffee shop and I bump into Diane, a police officer. And she asked me why I'm having a party at the Shields' house. I told her, Diane, I have nothing to do with it. It's another realtor. She looked pretty upset and said, they are doing it at night. Why at night? Did you tell them about what happens there at night? Honestly, at that point, I had said nothing to Kelly. I was pissed. I warned her to fail. But Diane managed to make me feel guilty. After all, she really was a good person. And she insisted that I warn them. The open house was set for a Saturday night. And it was Monday. I called her that evening. Then I called her Tuesday morning. Then I called her Tuesday night. Finally, she answered the phone on Wednesday morning. And I think she was playing games, ignoring me. Because when I finally got on the phone, she had a bit of attitude. Kelly, I need you to reconsider doing this event at night. How about we move it to the daytime? And that's when this bitch completely flipped out on me. You just don't want to see me succeed. Don't worry, you'll still get your 3% commission when I do what you couldn't do, make a fucking sale on this house. I was silent for a moment. Now, I knew we had tension between the two of us, but her words were filled with venom. I mean, this woman really hated me. And for what? I didn't know. This was bigger than just competition. This was personal. So I turned around and made it personal. Listen, you little country backwood pencil skirt wearing whore. I'm trying to help you. The property is not safe at night. And if you don't believe me, ask Diana, the police officer. She'll tell you. As for my commission, the bank had the property on their books before I even moved here. If you were any kind of fucking saleswoman, you would have known how to find it and had it sold before I even moved into town. You are not on my level. And not even in my league. Fuck, you're not even on the same planet as me, bitch. I'm a Martian. You're a fucking cave woman, scared, trapped in a cave because you're afraid of your own shadow. Yeah, I spazzed out on her just like that. And it felt good. And then I hung up the phone. Thursday, I see Diane again and we're having coffee. I tell her, look, I did my best to warn Kelly. And I would be at the property all day. By nightfall, I was leaving. And Diane volunteered to go to the property with her. She said she was off duty that day. And when Saturday came, I met her at the coffee shop and we headed to the property. When we arrived, I quickly realized that Kelly had went way overboard with this whole damn party thing. When we pulled into the gates, there were catering trucks, flower trucks, a temporary generator, an outdoor movie screen. She went all out trying to get this sale. And I must admit I was impressed. But none of that shit was going to get me to stay at this property until after dark. When we entered the house, it was just a bustling with people, setting up flowers, cleaning crews, mopping and dusting. She even baked cookies to make the house smell like home. Kelly was doing her thing. It was hard for me to admit it. But if people showed up and things went well, we both were going to make some money. I first around and found Kelly upstairs on the balcony in the master bedroom. And we locked eyes for a moment. She looked dazed and confused. You know, like her mind was somewhere else. That's when she looked at me and said, "You think I went too far? What if no one shows up? I just spent 12 grand. She was worried about the money, and I could understand that. I had been there before. Without thinking, I can't even explain why I did it. I just blurted out, "I'll split the cost with you." Right after I said it, I realized it was a moment of weakness, and I thought to myself, what am I doing? That's when Kelly smiled and apologized for the arguments we've had over the past couple of days. And just when we were making up, Diane walks in, making this awful, awkward entrance, tripping her way into the doorway. But she went straight to it. "Kelly, I'm a local officer. Are you aware this place is dangerous at night? Why are you doing this?" That's when Kelly looked at me and said, "Are you serious? I thought you were just being a hater." From there, I went on to tell Kelly my experience, and Diane shared hers. Wasn't sure if it was the fact that Kelly had invested so much money into this event, or she was just a skeptic, but she didn't listen. In 2 hours, guests would be arriving. It was kind of late to turn back now. So we moved off into the house, and Kelly disappeared among a crowd of people working and cleaning. The very first guest arrived at 4:30 and was greeted with champagne and began to walk around the property. By 5:45, there were 45 people walking around. The sun was about to set, so I headed out to my car, only to discover that I had been blocked in. And by blocked in, I don't mean like one car had me hemmed in. All the cars in front of the property had me blocked in. Diana, who was clearly smarter than me, had parked on the side of the house. So I went inside and offered to trade cards with her so I can get the hell out of there. She just laughed at me and said, "You're going to stick this out with me, buddy. Put your big boy drawers on and let's see what happens." So the sun sets, and things are actually going very well. The generator kicked in, and the property was well lit. I felt safe. In fact, I felt so safe that I started trying to help sell the property. That's when I ran into Robert, the gentleman who runs the foreclosure department at the bank. Now, for some reason, Robert was nervous. He was sweating and looking around, and he was drinking like a sailor. Robert cornered me and asked, "You think you guys gonna get this property sold today?" And during this conversation is when I discovered that the bank actually fronted the money for this event, not Kelly herself, the dirty heifer. But anyway, he seemed so nervous, I knew something was wrong. So I decided to ask him straight up, "Have you seen the wolves on this property?" That's when his eyes got big. "Wolves? No, I ain't seen no wolves. But I've been here before, and I've heard the sirens and seen the lights." So I pulled him into the bathroom, and I asked, "What the fuck is the deal with this place, Bob? What are you not telling me?" That's when Bob began to spill the beans. He said, "It's Navajo lands. Navajo Indian lands. The bankers owned this property for years. Our founders took it from them. In the back 10 acres were their burial grounds with mounds." All I could think was, "You disrespectful mother." Talk about pissed off. I went to locate Diane. I wanted to tell her about this new piece of information, but she was nowhere to be found. That's when you started to hear the sound coming from outside. And this shit was creepy. Walking out of the front door, the sound was coming from the sky. And at first, I thought I was going crazy, figuring I was the only person hearing this. But when other people came outside and started to join me on the porch looking up at the night sky, it was clear that everyone was hearing this. There were no clouds in the night sky, and looking around, there was nothing to indicate where the noise was coming from. Just as suddenly as the sound started, it stopped. A few people took that opportunity to leave, but most of them just went back inside. So I went back to searching for Diana. When I found her, she was in the master bedroom on the balcony. "What's wrong?" I asked. She had her back turned to me, staring at the back of the property. "Just look," she said, towards the back of the property. I could see movement. "They're coming in," she said. "They're coming in." For me, there was no need for an explanation. I could see it with my own two eyes. It looked like animals on all fours, 5 of them to be exact. They were moving slowly, hiding behind a brush, taking cover. Stalking is what they were doing. They were stalking to get closer to the house. Now, at this point, I have to say, I ain't nobody's hero. In fact, I'm a bit of an asshole. But so judge me how you choose to, but I needed to get out of the situation. I remember Kelly had left her keys in the master bathroom on the vanity. I noticed it earlier while she was talking that day. So I took him and head downstairs to the front door. Bob grabbed me by the shoulder and stopped me right about 10 feet away from the door and said if I can get this place sold, he would up the commission to 12%. If not, they were going to have to donate the land. For a second, I started to punch him in his face. He knew all this shit was going on his property, and he still let me come up here anyway. And that's when shit went crazy. The power went out. From upstairs, you heard 2 gunshots, and the damn siren sounds all returned at once. I was pushed out of the front door by people trying to exit the house, and I rolled down the steps, and panic set in. People were jumping over cars, falling over each other, trampling people. When I recovered from my fall, I made a beeline for the side of the house where Kelly parked her car. Got in, cranked it up, and when the lights came on, 2 of these wolves were standing right by the power generator. I may have possibly damaged a few vehicles getting out of there, and I possibly might have bumped a person, 2 or 3 or maybe 4 on my way to the front gate, but I got out of there. Hours later, I got a call from Diana. She was worried and said she searched everywhere for me. Diana explained that it seemed as if the wolves didn't want to harm anyone. They just wanted to run everybody away from the property. They never even entered the house or went near anyone's cars, but they growled and they howled from every direction. More people got hurt running than anything, she said. Then Diane explained to me there were only 2 cars left there. Bob, the guy from the bank, and mine. And no one had seen Bob anywhere. 48 hours later, Bob was found, wandering on the back 10 acres of the property. He was severely dehydrated and delirious, according to Diane. He claimed that the wolves dragged him away to that area and wouldn't let him leave. 2 days after Bob was found, that property was donated to a nonprofit associated with the Navajo Nation. I lost out on $175,000. Truthfully, I don't give a shit. I'm just glad that it's settled. Bob offered me another listing, a ranch closer to the border. I politely told him he could kiss my ass. I'm in full retirement, and if I want to sell real estate, I'm moving back to California.
You are now tuned in to Dark Waters Radio with Dark Waters, the king of horror.
Kirby, are you there, my friend? Kirby.
Hello?
Yeah, Kirby, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, DW.
Thank you for joining us, Kirby. I wanted to, ladies and gentlemen, Kirby is here. Before we get started talking, Kirby, I know there's a lot of stuff that you want to share with me. I was just telling them about, NOLA Defender, making an announcement that now I'm working with NOLA Defender, being a paranormal blogger, which is huge. You know, it's a magazine here locally. It's very popular, and it's actually popular worldwide. So I'm proud to announce that, Kirby. I'm really proud to announce that.
And I'm proud to say congratulations to you, DW.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Well, awesome job. Did you ever introduce Kirby properly? Because a lot of people I saw did go back and read the comments. Much love. Kirby feel the same way about you. However, they really need to know what Kirby's real name is. It's not KRBY.
Yes, KRR-B.
And what does it stand for?
Keeping it real, brother. That's what it stands for. That's what it always stands for. Keeping it real, brother.
Yeah, but you didn't say it. It's keeping it real.
I can't say it like you said, man.
You didn't get to tell me that the brother out. The brother's got a pause to it. See, brothers got a little swag till they walk like Dogman. Dogman don't just be running around crazy. Dogman got a swag, so it's keeping it real. Brother, got to put the pause. If you do the pause, you know Kirby. If you don't do the pause, you know you don't know Kirby.
Well, I know Kirby, and I didn't do the pause. So let me apologize, Kirby, for not doing the pause. Now,
apology not accepted. You've been knowing Kirby too long to be messing up my name. But we can move on past that.
Yeah, let us move past that. Let us move past that. Now, Kirby, you were telling me earlier that you are now representing Dogman, and as a spokesperson for all the Dogman clans around the world right now. and that you have some problems with some of the things that have been said about Dogman, some of the things that are going on with Dogman. And I want to get into that. I want to touch on some of that.
Well, this is so true, and I need to give a a disclaimer, because some people think Kirby's crazy already. I know it, but we all in good company. What people don't know is that Dogman chooses you. He doesn't just show up at anybody's house. He chooses you. So just as you have that special magnetism that calls Dogman and Sasquatch and Bigfoot, whatever your chosen name is, Kirby has that too. And this is a gift. I must offer this. This is a gift that we all can obtain. You just have to be free of mind, free of thought, and free of judgment. And then you can speak the language of Dogman.
Is that the same as the language of love?
No, language of love was an example, man. Everyone speaks a different language. Like when you're talking to, I don't know, you have to be able to communicate.
Wait. What's a dun-dun-dun?
Well, I don't want to give the politically correct term because it might offend somebody, but you know, somebody who's just a little bit, ain't the sharpest marble in the box. One of them. Or, see, this female thing, you got to know how to speak to the females too. But if God would just admit that he made a mistake with these females, we can fix them.
Wait,
but
what?
Because we think he's infallible, we got to accept what they are. And unfortunately, DW, there's female dog. Well, dog woman? Would that be PC? They got female dog women out here too. They need special attention.
So dog girl need love too.
You hit it on the nail.
All right, so Kirby, let me ask you this question. What is Dogman's main problem with what's going on right now? Because I know a lot of people are out here accusing Dogman of killing children, raping cattle, raping horses.
I've hit a cattle or two, but I ain't touched no children.
Wait, what?
Have you ever hit a cow or a sheep? I know you done been with a sheep, DW, because you're from Mississippi. And that's one thing we do in Mississippi is we tear sheep up. But now, because it's not on the forefront, we mad because Dogman getting some sheep. There's nothing wrong.
Hold on, Kirby. I ain't never did nothing. Kirby, hold on. I ain't never did nothing with no sheep, man. I ain't never touching no sheep.
You can keep it to yourself. It's all good. Keeping it real, brother.
Oh my God. So Dogman is upset because he's getting this bad rap. Now, I have heard stories about Dogman raping horses. You saying that Dogman is not out here raping animals, is what you're saying?
Would you mind if Kirby speaking first person for the Dogman?
Okay, that's fine. If you want to speak for Dogman in the first person, go for it.
Truth be told, there's only one horse that I would hit, and that's the big fine Clydesdale. Them little mares and all of that. No, that's too small because Dogman's got a big, righteous bird, and I don't mind pulling. It's got to be something that can handle a cow. You can put an arm in a cow and he just look at him. Ooh, he just turn around. It don't really affect him. So Dogman don't mind hitting a cow, but a horse, it's got to be Clydesdale, baby. Okay.
What about these accusations that you are running around eating people, Dogman? What about those accusations? Are y'all eating people or what? Because we're hearing all this stuff. Are y'all eating people?
That is absolutely preposterous. We like people. The problem between us and people is that people don't understand us. We're not dogs. We're not man. We are dog man. When you see our powerful visage, you get afraid, and that's understandable. But them guns, we know how to carry guns now. Those guns are not necessary. So there's how does Dogman say this properly? If you would greet us differently, maybe with a little French bread, that might work. Maybe with some different music than Zydeco, you might not bring the beast out in us. So it's all in the approach. If I approach you, DW, the wrong way, you're going to respond accordingly. Same exact thing with me. Don't come at me with no fear. I can't stand fear because I see you as a cow, and you know what I do to cows? I'm going to get that ass.
Oh, my God.
So yes, it could happen, but if you approach me like a man, then I'm going to treat you like a man.
Wow. Okay. I guess in some way, shape, or form that makes sense. You know, you approach me like a man, I'll treat you like a man. Well, what do you say to this, though? What do you say to this, Kirby? Because I know you speak for the Dogman.
Dogman.
What do you say to this, Dogman? The accusations that you guys do just terrifying things. You'll walk out, show yourself to somebody, growl, grunt, chase them off. Why do you guys do that? Why do you do that?
Man, we are talking. That's not growling and grunt. What do you want me to say? Pass the great poop home? I'm a dog man. Should I say more? What else? What do you? Let me ask you a question, DW. What do you want me to sound like?
You know, I don't know what you should sound like.
Exactly.
I don't know.
So a dog man is what a dog man is, and the dog man's going to always be what a dog man is. So we have to put the fear aside. These creatures are not, we are not here to harm you. We'd have been did it. You know, we knocked the cow down, and you never saw no cows have babies, so why not get a little dog man love in your life? That's possible. But you got to lay on your back, on your stomach. I'm sorry, lay on your stomach, like in the fetal position, and let us do what we do. We're not going to hurt you. Might bite you on the nape of your neck. And after we finish, I'll show you one thing. You're going to be looking for Dog Man next week.
Now, let me ask you this other question, because there's this speculation about where dogmen come from, where you guys come from. You know, I'm a believer of that when God created the earth, the angels fell from heaven, came down and slept with the daughters of men. And in the Bible, it says that those spirits corrupted every form of flesh. So I believe, and I could be wrong, you speaking for Dogman, that you guys were some kind of mutant creation from these fallen angels. But maybe you can give us some information about exactly where the hell y'all come from.
I could absolutely address that question. First, I have to digress just a little bit and give you a little history. When God sent those angels here the first time, they took the women as wives. Now, that was against the rules. And that's where the giants came from, so on and so on. We know that story. Then he flooded the earth. The biggest mass murder in world history. Killed everybody except 6 people. Now, if you fast forward, you heard about this dude named Goliath. Goliath was another giant. I thought God made a mistake at that point. I said, hold on, he killed all the giants, but there's one left. Found a mistake. But then I found out, because Kirby studies a lot of stuff in Dogman. I'm Dogman right now. Dogman studies, no Dogman on Kirby studies, but he told Dogman. So Dogman says that if you fast forward, you'll see that there are more giants after the flood. And I found out that God sent more angels. And they had sex with the women again. Now, we're not going to stay on the fact that God is a poor judge of character. We're going to circle back to that. That's another show. What we're going to focus on here, DW, is that if the angels from heaven who sucking the heavenly nipple, if they can't keep their hands off these women, DW, how in the hell do you expect you, me, Kirby, and anybody else to keep their hands off these women? So as Dogman, I fall under the same curse. If the angels got to knock down these women, with Dogman need to get 1 or 2 also. That's just the way it is. It's the way it was. But yes, we are offspring of such. You may have even seen our visage in a pyramid or 2. We've been here for a long time, but back then we had birdmen, dogmen, cowmen, pigmen, but now they killed all them. But we are still here, and we're gonna be here to the end of time, DW.
How did y'all survive, man? How did y'all survive all that? Because everything else died. What happened to y'all? How did y'all survive?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't been here forever, but I can talk to my grandfather, and he can probably tell me, and I'll let you know on the next show.
All right, well, talk to Grandpa Dogman and see what he has to say. Now, with all this negative PR going on around about you guys, and all these stories flying around, and I might be guilty of it because this is Dogman week, but with all this negative PR, nobody talks about how Dogman feels. How do you guys feel when you hear this type of stuff being spoken about you? Because it's kind of like Everybody's talking at you. Nobody's talking to you.
Dogman needs a hug. We're tired of all this. We are obviously revealing ourselves to chosen people. You're probably blonde hair, blue eyes, maybe brunette with brown eyes, thick thighs, slim waist. That's what we're looking for. But if you're seeing a big burly man out there because you're scared, well, we got to show him that I'm the big dog. I'm the big dog, not you. I'm the big dog. So send the old lady back out. Let me talk to her because Dogman speaks the language of love. So it's a huge, huge misconception.
I don't know how many of you listening to the story grew up as latchkey kids. And if you don't know what a latchkey kid is, that means you grew up in a single parent household and you had a key to the house at a young age, meaning you would come home and spend hours, I'm talking about hours, alone, all by yourself, until your mother or your father came home. Well, that's how I grew up. I was a latchkey kid. My mother would put me on a bus to school in the morning, and then in the evening time when I came home, I had to go into the house by myself, and she didn't get home until 8:30 at night. And I was getting home from school at 2:30, 2:45. One of the mass effects of being a latchkey kid is you feel abandoned. Quite frankly, as a young kid, I felt abandoned. But also at the same time, it makes you fiercely independent. However, those two things are something that's very hard to balance in life. That independence and that pride of being able to do things all on your own versus that need for attention and love that wasn't there. Then when you combine in the fact that as a latchkey kid, you come home and find your back door kicked in, your house ransacked, and everything spewed around, now you add in fear. And I remember those days, being 11 years old, after someone broke into our house, and having to come home every day wondering if they were coming back. Now, if you take that fear that I'm talking about right now, and you just think about it and focus on it for a second, and then you multiply that same fear by 1,000, that was the fear that I had when I had my Dogman encounter. Understand, I was a latchkey kid all the way through high school. It's my junior year in high school. And when I tell you I was fiercely independent, man, at that point in time, I was super independent. I had my own job. I had my set of friends. I had bought my own little raggedy car. I was riding around doing whatever I needed to do. But I still was coming home to an empty house. And in my mind, I was telling myself, it's okay that you come home to an empty house. You don't need anyone to protect you. You can protect yourself. Well, that all came crashing down one evening When I came home after dark, tried to put the key in the front door, and my mother had never changed the lock and it wouldn't unlock. So I had to circle around the back side of the house and go in through the back door. And let me tell you something. I never was afraid of the woods, and our neighborhood wasn't exactly rural. My closest neighbor's house was at a distance where you could see it, but I definitely, absolutely couldn't just scream and they come running and help me. So now, imagine a scene, circling around the side of the house. When I get to the back door, the back porch light is not on because there was no reason for it to ever be on because nobody ever used the back porch. So I'm standing there in the darkness, putting the key in, unlocking the door when I hear this growl coming from behind the shed. Now, to tell you where the shed is, it's to my right, about 15 feet. I remember it as clear as day. It was one of those white tin sheds. And I hear this growling sound so loud that tin begins to shake and vibrate. However, looking in that direction, it's pitch black, pure darkness. Can't see anything. Then this darkness inside of that darkness emerges, and it's taller than the shed itself, and it's moving around. Now pause right here and let me say this to you. That time, I did not see the Dogman. I saw the silhouette. I hurry into the house, lock the door, click on the back lights, go look out the kitchen window, and there's nothing there. But that time, I became afraid. And there's something about fear. I mean, fear itself, being in fear, that I believe made me to continue to have these encounters. Part of me feels like had I just ignored it, like it never happened, I would have been all right. But I couldn't. Man, I heard that. I heard that tin shaking, and it scared me to my core. A couple of days later, I make a point of changing the front lock myself, giving my mother another key and me taking another key. Everything is cool. I'm coming and going as usual. No freaking problem. Then it's a Saturday night. And I remember the Saturday night because my mom wanted me to spend it at home with her. But my girlfriend wanted to go out to the movies. And I remember the argument my mother and I had. Her saying, son, I never get a chance to spend time with you. I want us to stay inside and watch a movie tonight. And I remember the disappointment on her face when I told her, no, you've had ample opportunity to spend time with me, but you decided that you were going to work. I remember how those words pierced her soul like a knife, the tears in her eyes, walking out of the door, getting into the car and feeling bad about it, but pushing that feeling down. Have you ever experienced that where you said something that you knew hurt somebody? I mean, really, you should have been sorry, but your pride rose up and you said, nah, I'm not about to feel bad about it. I remember pushing it down in my mind, pushing it down in my soul, like whatever, I'm going to do what I want to do. Well, I go out with my girlfriend, we go to the movies, things are fine, we make out in the movies, I have a blast. Come home and all the lights are off outside. No porch lights, no floodlights, no nothing. I pull up in that driveway. To the right by the trees, I see that darkness again that's darker than the darkness. And I hear it growling. And then I hear it coming my way. And in that moment, I froze. I'm not going to lie to you. Imagine a scene. I'm standing outside of the car. You know how you go through the motion of closing your car door as you're walking away? Well, that's the motion. I was pushing that door closed. I hear the growl, and now I'm frozen, and I have to make a decision. Do I go inside of the house, or do I get in the car and leave? And I knew for a fact what that growl was because I heard it before, and it was very, very distinctive, unlike anything you will ever hear when you hear a Dogman growl. In that split second, I make a decision to get back in the car, crank it up, turn the high beams on, and back out of there. And as I'm backing out of the driveway, this thing is illuminated in the lights. Now, I'll say this to you. There have been eyewitnesses who described Dogman as looking like a hyena. And what I saw looked like a freaking gigantic hyena. Neck, shoulders, arms. I mean, it looked like a hyena. Even had the same color scheme as a hyena. But this thing looked vicious. Like its job was to get me. Like it was sent to kill and eat me. Now, this might be the fear and adrenaline kicking in, but in that moment, I felt like it was looking through the high beams and into the windshield directly at me. I remember it taking its hand and putting it on the top of its head
and swiping down its snout like it was wiping its face, and then dropping down on all fours and coming in my direction. Get this, I end up backing up, going down the street for about 50 yards, full speed, backing up down the road, hitting the brakes, turning the wheels, spinning, shifting in the drive, and taking off, getting out of there. Let me say this. You may be thinking to yourself the same thing that eventually came to my mind as I was driving away. Because after driving up that roadway for about 3 to 4 minutes, it dawned on me, hold on a second, man. My mama is in that house. The lights were all off. Is my mama? And it was right then and there in that moment that I was hit across the head with regret. You know in the cartoons where Wile E. Coyote would get hit by an anvil that fell out of the sky? That's what it felt like. I got hit upside the head with regret. Like you should have never left your mother in that house all alone. So I turned that car around in the middle of the road, accelerating as fast as I can, deciding that I don't give a damn if this thing is out there, I'm gonna roll over it. But I'm getting inside of that house to check on my mother. Now, as I'm coming towards the house, I cut off the road, come across the yard, and slam on my brakes, sliding to a halt right in front of the front porch. Hop out, go in, turn the key, and now I'm screaming, Mama, are you okay? Mama, are you in the house? Mama, are you all right? And the craziest thing is, my mother is standing there in the kitchen eating soup and crackers. Now, let me tell you something. I didn't see this creature again after that. And I know it sounds weird and strange, but I'm telling you, part of me feels like it was that level of disrespect to my mother that made this happen. First of all, let me start off by saying this. I've been listening to the Dark Waters channel since 2016, when it all first started. And over that time period, I fell in and out of love with Dark Waters himself. Just like everybody else, he goes through phases where he's active, then he's inactive. He goes through phases where he's arguing with people, and he's not arguing with people. But the one thing I never questioned about him was whether he was telling the truth or not. These events happened back in 2017. Long before anyone started talking about the Facebook groups and the activity that happened inside of them. I joined one of the Dogmen Facebook groups. And in my mind, it's an investigation group. We're going to get together, go to locations, and investigate. But I didn't realize that it was a hell of a lot more going on in this field than what I was being told. And I wouldn't even phrase it like that. It's not what I was being told. It was what I was assuming. I assumed that most people in this field were out to get evidence. Other people in the field were out to just be entertained. Some people to make money. I had no clue whatsoever the danger that I was putting myself in. The very first trip that these guys organized is to Holly Springs National Forest. Now, if you guys know anything about Holly Springs National Forest, then you know the famous Dogman encounter that it all hinged upon. Now, after all this back and forth, after all this back and forth on Facebook, it's supposed to be 25 people that go out on this investigation. When I get there, it is only 8 people. Pause right here and let me say this. And I want to be clear with you. I've been in and out of all the groups. I've been in the groups with the fuzzy pictures that people argue and fight all the time. I've been in the groups that have real evidence, that are private, that you can see some scary things. Before you make the same mistake that I did. The majority of the people who say they want to find evidence really don't want to find evidence. They will not go out into the field. Now, they'll tell you, yeah, I'll meet you there on Saturday. I really need you to understand before you put yourself in these type of situations and line yourself up for the foolishness that I did, that they don't really care. At the last minute, something stops them, they get the heebie-jeebies, but they don't really want to find evidence. Nonetheless, we get there, and it's this small group of people. Listen, maybe I missed the memo, but I was under the impression that we were going out there based on scientific signs, facts, looking for footprints, looking for tree breaks, things that make sense. However, once we get out there, the group is being led by this woman who proclaims she's a psychic. No. This is some bullshit is what I'm saying to myself. You proclaim to be a psychic. I have no way of knowing, woman, if you are a psychic or not. But these guys clearly have been following this woman around in the woods on multiple occasions. Now, what made the situation worse was they portrayed it like it was a male-dominated group. But when we got to the field, she was clearly in control. So now I'm protesting this entire situation. Imagine a scene, me standing, leaning on my truck, explaining to them, hold on, man. I thought that we were going out here to do this the right way, not following behind this woman. And everyone gets angry, accusing me of being a sexist, a misogynist. I didn't even know what the word meant. All I knew was it was a whole load of bullshit that was going on. Get this, tempers flare. She looks at them and starts to calm the situation down. And that was the first sign that something weird was going on, because it was the way she looked at them. It was almost like they were afraid of her, and they began to calm down. And she says, listen, this is not going to take long. We're only going to be out here for a few hours. Why don't you just come along with us, and you'll see how we operate and how we do things. Are you familiar with your little inner voice? That little voice that tells you, go left instead of going right, look this way, turn this way. Well, my little inner voice starts saying, no, get your behind in the car and go on about your business. But you see, I wasn't really trained to listen to that voice at that point in time. Oh, buddy, but when I tell you after this encounter, I became trained and I listened. Oh, let me tell you, I listen clearly now, because I don't in that moment. And I say, okay, I'll go out with you guys. Let's go. Now, here's the other messed up part about the situation. They didn't want you to carry any firearms into the field. Because she convinced them that because of her psychic abilities, they would be fine. However, that was something I couldn't go for. Just couldn't cooperate with that one. So as they turned their backs, I opened the door, reach the glove compartment and get my sidearm and tuck it away, and then head off into the woods with them. Now imagine the scene. We're walking through the woods and she kind of has us in this triangular formation, but it's spread out with her in the middle. And she's talking about the woods and how the spirits of the woods and how the trees are telling her which direction to go in and telling her that they've moved towards the river. Now I'm thinking to myself, is this bitch a witch? The more I listen to her and the more I hear her lingo and the more I hear her talking, this ain't no psychic shit. She ain't saying the spirits is talking to her. She's saying that the trees are talking to her and this is talking to her. And I'm trying to figure this whole situation out. Listen, we have been moving through those woods for about 35 minutes. Hadn't seen sign of nothing. Basically, all we doing is frolicking around, following behind this broad in the woods. When she stops us and says, they're here. Everybody, look around. They're here. And the group of men start to form this circle around her, like they're protecting her. Imagine a scene. She says, they're here. We found the place. Those men circle around her. I'm outside of the circle looking at the situation like, okay, this is some ignorant shit going on in these woods. And she looks at me and says, you need to join the formation for your own protection. I pause right here and let me say this to you. And I don't know how I'm going to say this and not sound like a asshole. And I've been accused throughout my lifetime of just being an asshole. But I'm thinking to myself, bitch, ain't nothing you can do to protect me from no damn Dogman or no Bigfoot with your little short, skinny ass. The most I can do is be a flesh punching bag for one of these monsters if they come in to get you. So I start to back away from the group. Again, she screams, if you want to be protected, fall in rank, get in line if you want to be protected. So now that little voice is talking to me again in my head. That little voice says, didn't I tell you not to come out here in these woods with these people? What is wrong with you? I mean, clear as day, the little voice is saying, didn't I tell you not to come out here? And that right there in that moment is when I knew I was in danger. Not of no cryptids, not of no Bigfoot, not of nothing. I was in danger from this woman and these men. Because the next words that come out of this woman's mouth to these men is, you go get him and bring him in line with everyone else. So two of these guys break off their ranks and start walking my way. Now, y'all remember what I told you. I reached in that glove compartment and I got that thing. I got it tucked away. But the issue in my mind is, do these guys actually have weapons on them? Or are they just that crazy that they think they're going to come over here and physically put their hands on me? So I let it play out a little bit. You know, I don't want to draw down on them and have to shoot them. Once you pull a gun, you need to use it. So I let it play out. They walk up. One of the guys puts his hand on my shoulder and says, come on, man, you're making this more difficult than it needs to be. Come on. So I tell him politely, listen, man, I'm going to need you to take your hands up off of me, and I'm about to leave. The other guy, who's bigger and more muscular, goes to wrap his arm underneath my armpit like he's going to drag me like I'm a kid and bring me in line. And I tell him, I say, man, you got 4 seconds to get your fucking hands up off of me. He looks and starts to yank and pull me, and I reach in, grab my weapon, and pistol whip him across the head. Bow, bow, bow. Now I done backed off. His head is bleeding. The other guy's in shock. She's screaming, oh my, what is going on? And all of a sudden now everybody become victims in this situation. What are you doing? You're attacking us. And everybody turns into a victim. The most insane shit I've ever seen. So now I have the weapon drawn and I explain to them, listen, I'm going back to my vehicle. You guys can frolic around here in the woods and do whatever the hell it is that you guys do. But I'm going back to my vehicle. And if anybody follows me, I'm killing them right here where we stand. And so I slowly start to back out of there. And when I tell you that man is bleeding out, oh, his head is bleeding all over the place. And the way I see it, if there was a Dogman or a Bigfoot around, oh yeah, they coming to eat on you, boy, because you was bleeding bad. And I get this, they all turn their attention to him and start tending to his wounds. And I get up out of the woods, get back to the vehicle, pull off, but I don't leave. I want to see how long these people are going to be here in these woods. I'm sitting there off the roadway. And here's the freaky part of it. I pull my vehicle off of the roadway into the trees where nobody can see me, but I have a clear sighting of their vehicle. And do you know, they didn't come out of the woods till 9 o'clock at night, even with him bleeding profusely from his head. They didn't come out of the woods until 9 p.m. Now, you may be speculating to yourself like I was, what the hell is this situation about? Why do we even go out here if we're not going to find Dogman, if we just going to follow in behind this woman? I couldn't, and that's where I was for about 2 years. I couldn't quite understand what was going on. Until I heard Dark Waters talking about the sexual perversion that takes place in this field. I started to do some research, and it requires certain sexual acts and certain murderous acts in order for a human being to change into a werewolf.
And the mayor also has spoken as well, saying that as a city, we're better than this, and urging protesters in downtown Atlanta to steer clear.
Jeff, I'm going to jump in
violence.
right now where you see this person that vandalized this police car. They are stomping on top of it, jumping on this windshield that has been caved in right now. We are seeing this happen live. No idea what led to this. You see those gates being thrown. This is the most intense thing that we have seen in this protest right now, with these police cars being vandalized, windshields being busted out, people running all over the place, throwing objects, police cars now under attack. I guess they were there initially to try to block off the crowds, but now the cars are under attack. Jeff, let's go to Hope Ford on the ground. Hope, what can you tell us?
Okay, so people are telling us that they were just in there and it was pandemonium. They're saying don't, they were telling us don't go any further, don't go in there. And as you can see, they're getting on the cars now. They're starting to stomp. It's okay. So we're gonna move a little bit away so that we have a lot of people who are shouting vulgarities. But you see, okay, we're gonna back up a little bit. They're really starting to kind of bang on those police cars right there. And the crowd is moving back. The crowd is starting to move back as they're starting to beat on all of those police cars. There are a couple of people who are, kind of egging them on. But for the most part, there's a lot of people who are in shock and who are starting to back up from what's happening. We haven't seen any police cars. Okay, there's right there. You can see him, he's banging on it with his arm. They're stomping on it. We haven't seen any police officers right now. And it seems to be just continuing to move to all of the police cars. Things kind of starting to get a little bit out of hand as those emotions are continuing to rise.
May 30th, 2020. When I tell you I will never forget that day, I mean I will never, ever forget that day. It's a big part of the reason why I don't live in Atlanta anymore. Let me paint the picture for you. This is after the death of George Floyd. There are riots all over the place. And I'm thinking, downtown Atlanta, you should be safe. No, sir, no, ma'am. And I need you to understand something. I tell you this story from the perspective of a black man who paid $1.1 million for his condo. And the things that I experienced were absolutely despicable. But this story is not about the riots. It's not about the burning or the looting or the fact that some jackass decided that he was going to jump up and down on the roof of my Mercedes-Benz, claiming that the vehicle belonged to a white person while I am there with the keys in my hand, telling him this is my vehicle. And it didn't matter whose vehicle it was. It didn't matter the skin color of the owner whatsoever. What I witnessed was pure and utter lawlessness. That's what I found myself trapped in walking home. Imagine a scene. I leave work, there's traffic and congestion everywhere. My condo is 15 blocks away from my office. So I said, guess what? I'm gonna go ahead and walk that way. So I decide there's no Uber, no Lyft. I'm just gonna go ahead and walk home. The first block is cool. Second block, cool. By the time I get 3 blocks into this walk, I start to notice there's a crowd of people forming. And not a small crowd of people. And they're all headed in the same direction that I'm headed. Now, I don't know if you know this about rides, but when a ride is in the process of starting, you don't have any clue that's what's going on. You just notice a whole bunch of people in one area. So I stop at one of the local restaurants that I frequent, get a hamburger, some french fries, chill, relax, thinking to myself, okay, maybe they got some kind of concert, something going on. I'll just let all the people pass by. Nope, greatest mistake I could have ever made in my life. I end up sitting there talking to the owner of the restaurant for 2.5 hours. By the time I go outside, it is now dark. Now pause right here in the story and let me say this. Again, this story is not about the riots. It's about the lawlessness and what I saw transpiring during these riots. So now as I'm walking out of the door, making a left, headed home, the owner comes running outside and says, hey man, be careful. It's some rioting and looting going on. He pulls out his cell phone and shows me the Instagram account of one of his friends' restaurants that's currently being looted. So now I'm thinking to myself, I live in $1 million condo. All I got to do is get home. There is no way in hell that the people who develop these condos are going to allow this type of bull crap to go on in that area. It just doesn't make any sense. And I need you to understand, the cops were always at this condo. So I'm saying to myself, hey, if I can just get there, everything will be fine. So now I'm walking along and I'm starting to notice things going on in between buildings and down alleyways. For example, the first alleyway I walk by, I see a couple of guys with masks on. They're squatted down and they're digging inside of these backpacks. Now, first thing that comes to my mind, this is Atlanta. These some jack boys, so I get to step and get the hell on up out of their way, right? I go another 2 blocks, and that's when I start to smell the smoke. Something was on fire. 3 more blocks, and it's pure and utter madness. Smoke everywhere, police in the streets. They have people throwing sticks and bottles, breaking out windshields of cars. It's pure bedlam going on in downtown Atlanta. So now I'm standing there thinking to myself, okay, How the hell do I get out of this? Looking to my left, there's another alleyway, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? The best thing I can do is find a way around all of this foolishness. So I dart off into that alleyway. And to paint a picture for you, it's not a dark alley, it's well lit, it feels safe, there's no reason for me to be worried. I'm walking, and I'm walking, and I'm walking, and when I get to the end of the alley, I can go left or I can go right. Now I'm on the back side of one of the office buildings, right by the loading dock. There's 2 dumpsters. There's one truck that was back there offloading goods into this building. I circle around the front of that 18-wheeler, and when I come around the front of that 18-wheeler, I see them. This crowd of people, 20, 30 people coming in my direction. Understand, every last one of them are wearing all black. They have bandanas, they got hoodies, their faces are covered, and their hands are covered. So I'm saying to myself, see, this is some bullshit you done found yourself in. And there's absolutely no way that I'm walking into that crowd. So I duck on the other side of the rig of the 18-wheeler, and I'm standing there thinking to myself, okay, if I go back up this alley, I'm going back into the ride. Clearly, this group of people are flanking the police for some reason, and I don't want anything to do with it. And right here's when things go from bad to worse, because I'm looking around for a place to hide from this group of people. And I noticed that one of these dumpsters is not for trash, it's for shredded papers. So I hurry up, open the top, jump inside. And this is where it really gets scary. I'm down inside of that dumpster. The lid doesn't close all the way. I'm doing my best just to keep still as I peer through this little opening, and that crowd is going by. And absolutely nobody's looking in my direction. It gets to the very end of the crowd, and there's this one guy with them, tall, way taller than the others. He stops and he looks directly at me. And understand, I'm concealed inside of this dumpster. There is no way in hell that he knew I was there, but somehow he knew. You know how when someone's wearing a hoodie and they have the bandana over their face, but it's slid all the way up to the very bottom of their eyes? That's how he looked from a distance, just like a tall person, all black bandana slid all the way up to his eyes. However, he stops and starts working his way in my direction. And as he gets closer and closer, I'm noticing that his eyes give off this glistening purple color. Now he's 10 feet away from me, standing there, staring directly into the opening. He says,
"Glenn, I see you. Join us, Glenn. Come be with us, Glenn. Glenn, I see you."
Pause right here for a moment and let me explain something to you. There's fear, right? Like scary movie fear. Like I'm laying in the bed watching a scary movie and the movie's so scary and I feel like something might be in the room with me, right? There's that kind of fear. And then there's fear. The kind of fear that seeps into your bones. The kind of fear that gets into your blood and pulsates through your veins. The kind of fear that makes your toes tingle and burn. That's the kind of fear I was experiencing. And then it took the hoodie off. When I say it wasn't a man. It was an it. Unlike anything I've ever seen. It had these ridges in his head, almost as if someone had taken their 5 fingers, started on his forehead, and pushed them all the way back to the back of its head, digging in, leaving these little indentions. And what I'll never forget is the eyebrows. These eyebrows with these deep indentions into them, and those purple glowing eyes. The most terrifying thing I have ever seen. Again, he says, "Glenn, join us, Glenn. Come be with us, Glenn." Picture this, I sit in that dumpster for another hour, too afraid to move, wondering if that thing was still out there. Finally, when I mustered the courage to open the lid and climb out, no one was around. So I headed around that rig and took off running all the way home. And here's where the next problem came in. By the time I got to my condo, there were people on the streets everywhere pushing and shoving, throwing bottles, throwing rocks. The police were going back and forth with them, and I had to cross that crowd to get to the other side of the street just to get to the garage to get inside of my condo. And as I'm pushing my way through that crowd, I notice him standing there amongst everyone else, amongst all the movement, all the activity, all the violence. He's just standing still, looking, almost as if he was enjoying all of the mayhem. Now I'll go down the ramp into the garage, and there are people everywhere, breaking windows, destroying cars. I look over, and it's these 2 young black dudes jumping up and down on my freaking Mercedes Benz. So I confront them saying, hey, what the hell are you doing? And these two idiots look at me and say, these white people got all these fancy cars and we don't have these fancy cars. So we're destroying all their cars. I tell him, young man, that is my car. And it does not matter the skin color of the person who owns these cars because they worked for them. Get the fuck off of my car. These two clowns jump down, take off running back up the ramp and into the crowd, leaving me standing there, amazed at the damage that they were able to do. And they did it for no reason whatsoever. So now I'm pissed off and I'm just ready to go inside. As I'm turning to go through the doors that lead to the elevator, I notice him again, standing at the top of the ramp, looking at me. And so now I'm screaming at him, what do you want? What the hell do you want? What do you want? And again, I hear that voice that sounds like three voices talking at the same time, but this time it booms and echoes through the entire garage, saying,
I want death, I want destruction, and I want mayhem, Glenn. Join us, Glenn. Join us.
Have you ever heard something that sent chills up and down your spine? That's what happened to me right then and there. I knew that that wasn't a man. I knew without a doubt that that was something from the pits of hell. Someone had unleashed that on the city of Atlanta.
Psalm 109. Hold not thy peace, O God of my praise. For the mouth of the wicked and the mouth of the deceitful are opened against me. They have spoken against me with a lying tongue. They compassed me about also with words of hatred, and fought against me without a cause. For my love they are my adversaries. But I give myself unto prayer, and they have rewarded me evil for good, and hatred for my love. Set thou a wicked man over him, and let Satan stand at his right hand. When he shall be judged, let him be condemned, and let his prayer become sin. Let his days be few, and let another take his office. Let his children be fatherless, and his wife a widow. Let his children be continually vagabonds, and beg. Let them seek their bread also out of their desolate places. Let the extortioner catch all that he hath, and let the stranger spoil his labor. Let there be none to extend mercy unto him, neither let there be any to favor his fatherless children. Let his posterity be cut off, and in the generation following, let their name be blotted out. Let the iniquity of his fathers be remembered with the Lord, and let not the sin of his mother be blotted out. Let them be before the Lord continually, that he may cut off the memory of them from the earth. Because that he remembered not to show mercy, but persecuted the poor and needy man, that he might even slay the broken in heart. As he loved cursing, so let it come unto him. As he delighted not in blessing, so let it be far from him. As he clothed himself with cursing like as with his garment, so let it come into his bowels like water, and like oil into his bones. Let it be unto him as the garment which covereth him, and for a girdle wherewith he is girded continually. Let this be the reward of mine adversaries from the Lord, and of them that speak evil against my soul. But do thou for me, O God the Lord, for thy name's sake, because thy mercy is good, deliver thou me. For I am poor and needy, and my heart is wounded within me. I am gone like the shadow when it declineth. I am tossed up and down as the locust. My knees are weak through fasting, and my flesh faileth of fatness. I became also a reproach unto them. When they looked upon me, they shaked their heads. Help me, O Lord my God, O save me according to thy mercy, that they may know that this is thy hand, that thou, Lord, hast done it. Let them curse, but bless thou. When they arise, let them be ashamed, but let thy servant rejoice. Let mine adversaries be clothed with shame, and let them cover themselves with their own confusion as with a mantle. I will greatly praise the Lord with my mouth, yea, I will praise him among the multitude, for he shall stand at the right hand of the poor, to save him from those that condemn his soul.
There are events that happen all around the world, and they go virtually unnoticed, unless they're elevated to the evening news. Matter of fact, most people around the entire globe have no idea, no clue as to the ever-present danger that surrounds them. Sure, by now you're listening to things about the war on the news, other information about vaccines and their effects that they're having on the human body. Soon you'll learn about the vaccines being in the food and the water, and it'll all come out. If the average individual paid close attention to what was going on all over the world, you would see the battle of good and evil playing itself out on the world stage. As for us, truthfully, at this point, I wish we could go back to the beach in Ibiza, to those carefree days of living. However, those days are long gone, and I know now that they'll never return. So much has happened in the past 5 years. Frankly, it might have been easier to kill myself than to face what we were going through and the things that I'm about to share with you. Look, frankly, there's no easy way to pick up where we left off because so much time has passed. So I'm just going to start telling you everything. If you recall, the war between Roosevelt and Sorkin started slowly and escalated tick for tack. I remember getting a call from Roosevelt's private assistant. While in the middle of that conversation with her, I hear this alarm go off in the background. Then you hear some kind of tussle, and the phone hangs up. And from that moment on, it was like we were shot out of a cannon. These series of events happened. Many of them planned, some of them unplanned. It was the proverbial shit hitting the fan, and at that point in time, all you could do is duck and dodge because it was coming from every angle. That next day, we get a call from Roosevelt. He was sending a plane for me and Roger. Now, while all of this was going on, we were still deciding what we were going to do with Lily, the pregnant woman and her child. And if that wasn't enough, Chef was dealing with his sister and the fallout from that situation, which was only getting worse day by day. And then there was Scissors, our friend, our brother, who was in the process of going off the reservation. And when I say off the reservation, I mean way off the reservation. He had gone into what we later learned to call the Valley of Darkness, a place where men go to die, a place where their souls go to die and never return. And I need you to understand something. When a living man kills his own soul, there is nothing there. I mean, absolutely nothing left. He's possessed by pain. And it's that pain inside of him that wants to inflict pain on anyone and anything. The following day, Roosevelt arrives in his jet, picks up Roger and I. And I need you to understand something. Boarding his private jet was different than flying on our cargo plane. It felt regal. Opulence is the best way to describe what we walked into. And that was the first time I met Tanaka. Now, I don't know if you ever met anyone like this, but Tanaka was a man that seemed like he paid attention to every minor detail. Head, eyes, always moving back and forth, scanning the room. He was lean and muscular with a scar on his face that went directly across the corner of his right eye. I wouldn't exactly describe Tanaka as a super intimidating person, but he definitely gave you the impression that he wasn't the one to mess with. Roosevelt introduces him as his cybersecurity consultant. But Tanaka didn't give off that computer geek vibe. He gave off more of that, I'll stab you and shoot you, but I know a little bit about computers vibe. It all didn't make sense at first. We're ushered to our seats, offered a bite to eat, and told we'll discuss the matters at hand once we're in the air. 15 minutes later, we're a mile high in the air, and Rusevich lays it on heavy. Sorkin had infiltrated his organization and done major damage. Imagine the scene. While he and Tanaka were away from his office, a man came in, well-dressed, polite, had an employee badge, but his secretary, who had been with him for 20 years, didn't ever remember this man being in the building, so she called security. By the time they find him, he was in the server room. A fight ensues. This guy takes out 4 well-trained ex-military guards like it's nothing while downloading information from Rusevich's computer. Then he uploads a virus to their servers. Tanaka cuts Rusevich off, saying, it was a custom adaptation to the original emote virus that lays dormant in the system for days, that slowly affects and monitors all computers, then relays information back to a host server. According to Tanaka, he'd been working for days trying to figure out where the information was going, and he had finally tracked it back to the source. So why are we here? Roger asks. He says, because I trust Tanaka and I trust you. Someone on the inside of my organization knew about this. Our systems are flawless. Wouldn't you agree, Tanaka? Top security. Someone inside had to help. The problem was Rusevich hadn't hired anybody new to the top level of his organization in 4 years. And by new, he went on to explain that he was talking about his inner circle of employees and managers. So we're talking about someone in your organization who's been blackmailed, right? His reply, it doesn't matter. I don't give a damn where it came from. What matters is we stop them from stealing information from us. Why don't you just shut the whole damn thing down? Scrap it all. As those words are coming out of my mouth, the two of them begin to laugh. Shut the system down. Really, shut the system down. Our main system is connected to our entire organization. 48 companies, Steve. There's no way to do that. Should I just shut down a connection to every company? Do you know what kind of havoc that would unleash? Do you know what kind of money I would lose if we did that? Tanaka cuts in, explaining that the virus is designed to delete everything if we shut down the servers. He tells us that he's analyzed it over the past couple of days, and the only way to deal with it is at the source. And it just so happened that that source was in Krasnodar, Russia, an organization called the Black Box. Hold on for a second. Let me get this straight, Roger says. You want us to do exactly what? Help Tanaka in Russia? Rusevich stands up from his seat and begins to pace up and down the floor. And I can't tell you for sure if this was fear that he was projecting with these next words, or if it was just the fact that he was completely overwhelmed with everything that was going on. But he says, this is Sorkin we're dealing with here. Sorkin. You know as well as I know that his hands are in everything. I need you and your team to go with Tanaka. I can trust you and your team. I can't trust anybody else with this. I can't outsource this. Meanwhile, while we're on the plane with Rusevich, unbeknownst to us at this time, Chef and Kid were dealing with an expert trap laid by Sorkin himself. You see, after calling the police upon the discovery of his missing sister and kids, Chef was not only perplexed, but he wanted blood. Kid was doing everything in his power to calm him down. But as the police questioned him, he began to lose it. So, you just came back in town and found the back door open and discovered the place like this? Chef, out of aggravation, replied, and if you're suggesting I killed my sister and her kids, then waited for the blood to dry on the steps before deciding to call the police for help, then you're as dumb as you look. And from there, the situation only got worse when Chef's ID was run. Somehow in the system, it came back saying that he was on the terrorist watch list. That led to an argument with him being detained, but when they ran Kid's ID, nothing came up. However, under the circumstances, he was taken into custody as well. So while we're in the air, the two of them were being arrested. And this is where it really, really gets bad. In the middle of that night, Chef is taken from the holding cell and escorted into a room for interrogation. Not by the local police, but by Homeland Security. And guess what this guy was asking him about? He questioned him for hours about our trip to Russia, why we were in the region, and trying to get information about the explosion. When he didn't get an answer, that's when he started to beat Chef. And as Chef was taking that butt whooping, Kid was growing increasingly worried back in his holding cell, wondering what the hell was going on. He paced back and forth in that cell for a solid hour and a half when one of the local officers came in and said, "I'm not sure what you boys are into, but I looked into you, made some phone calls, and you ain't no damn terrorist, and neither is he. You guys are the exact opposite. So what in the hell is happening?" That's when Kid decided to take a risk and tell him what he thought was going on. It was a setup from the beginning. And as he's going through the process of explaining to the officer why he believes it was a setup, that officer chimes in saying, "No kidding. You know what? I think I believe you." He said there was no damn way that Homeland Security showed up within an hour and a half. And besides, he didn't like the feds coming down to his small town doing anything anyway. That's when Kid asked him if he could make a few phone calls to see what he could find out. Told him, "Listen, you can be right next to me while I make my calls, but I need to get us some help." I believe that it was that officer's disdain for the federal government as a whole that led to Kid having an opportunity. Now I need you to understand something. Roger and I are still in the air on our way to London when the phone starts to vibrate. Tanaka was there in the process of explaining to us exactly what the black box was, how it came to be, and how much of a problem this organization truly was. Imagine an organization that has access to every Ring doorbell, every Nest camera, every security camera, tablet, every computer monitor around the entire world. That is the black box. It was a private cybersecurity organization whose power and might rivaled that of the NSA itself. Like I said, Tanaka is in the process of explaining all of this to us while our minds are being blown out of the water. Roger's phone begins to vibrate. And you know how it is. You're in the middle of a conversation. The phone is ringing, it's vibrating. You know it's vibrating, but you're not paying attention because your mind is just totally preoccupied with what's being said to you. Tanaka stops in the middle of his sentence and says, "Someone's phone's ringing." Now pause right here for a moment and let me put you in the mindset that I was in. I'm not telling you that I was afraid of Sorkin. I'm not. I mean, if Sorkin was standing in front of me right now, I would have put a bullet in his head. But the idea, the concept of the power and strength that he held in that moment, right then and there, I felt as if he knew that we were talking about him. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. When you're dealing with an opponent who's so powerful, so strong, has his fingers in so many things that he creates this sense of paranoia. And that's where we were in that moment. I'm paranoid as Roger's answering the phone. He picks up the phone and it's Kid calling us from the jail. And he proceeds to tell us everything that was going down. Roger puts the phone on speaker and Kid begins to whisper, "Listen, I'm not sure how long I have, but we're being set up. Homeland Security has Chef in custody, interrogating him. And I'm 100% sure that he's been added to the terrorist watch list." Now slow down for a second right here, just in case you went off to get a glass of water, some chips, and you just coming back, understand. Let me bring you back up to speed. We're a mile high up in the air and just discovered that our team needs to go to Russia with Tanaka to deal with the Black Box organization. And while we're discussing that, we learned that Chef and Kid are in custody and that we all may be now on the terrorist watch list. Imagine that for a moment. Our mouths drop open and Rusevich, he starts laughing. I'm talking about bent over at the waist, dying laughing. Right then and there in that moment, I didn't find the whole situation funny. Rusevich says he's not on any damn terrorist watch list. Homeland Security is not looking for him. Someone hacked the system and added him and whoever else to the list. It's the oldest trick in the book. I've done it. Sorkin's done it. Many of people have done it. He looks at us and says, and whoever the guy is in the interrogation room, he damn sure is in Homeland Security. From there, he turns his attention to Tanaka and says, will you please fix this for them so we can move on? Now listen, I'm not sure if you've seen this before or if the technology is out to the public eye at this point in time, but Tanaka pulls out what he called the looking glass. Never seen anything like it in my life. It looks like a regular laptop, but when he turns that device on, it projects a holographic screen image in the air right in front of you. And he is able to interact with those holographic images in the air. Some of the most freakiest crap I have ever seen. We watched from the plane as Tanaka accessed federal databases and found that Chef Ben and Scissors were all added to the terrorist watch list over the past 3 weeks. We also sat there and watched as he removed them. Then, while Kid is still on the phone, he pulls the arrest records, simultaneously looking up the head officer at that station, an officer named Officer Hayes, and calling him. The sound waves from the phone call are in the air in front of us. The conversation goes like this. He says, Officer Hayes, there is a man in your interrogation room right now who is impersonating. He is not a member of Homeland Security. The two men that you are holding are not on a terrorist watch list. Now, as Officer Hayes is going through the mental gymnastics of trying to figure out what the hell is going on, Tanaka pulls up each and every camera inside of that police station. So now we are watching Officer Hayes as he sits there tapping on the desk trying to decide if what he's hearing is true. He proceeds to ask Tanaka what organization he is with, and he tells him, I am not with any organization. I'm calling you to share the truth with you. As this conversation is going on, he is running facial recognition inside the interrogation room on the man who is standing there. And he tells Officer Hayes, if you give me one moment and trust me, I will send you a full file on who is inside of your interrogation room pretending to be a member of Homeland Security. The facial recognition scan completes running, and then it pops up right in front of us, and the damn guy wasn't even American. His name was Stephen Kovac, and I want you to remember the name Kovac. The way Tanaka responded to his file being pulled up, it wasn't fear, but it was kind of like, man, Lord, let it be anybody but Kovac. He tells Officer Hayes the file has been emailed to him on Stephen Kovac. Meanwhile, Roger and I are looking at the file on the screen. He was born in Montenegro, an A&B agent. His father was a former intelligence agent. His mother died at birth. And the thing that stood out to me the most was the blinking red words that said that this man was extremely dangerous. Now pause. Let me say this to you. In the field that we work in and in the people that we deal with, they don't use words like killer. They use words like dangerous. And the reason why they use the word dangerous is because when a man is dangerous, it doesn't matter the situation he's in. You can give a dangerous man a can of Coca-Cola and he will make a bomb out of it. You can give a dangerous man a plastic butter knife and a plastic straw and he's going to find a way to kill you with it. And I need you guys to understand this. This is the type of danger that we're talking about when we're talking about Stephen Kovac. Tanaka goes on to explain to Officer Hayes. He says, listen, this guy is extremely well trained and very, very dangerous. Here's how I think you should proceed. If I were you, I would go to the cell and let the other gentleman that you were holding out of that cell, you and every officer that you have, including him, should go and confront him. And even with you guys outnumbering him with size and force, it's still a chance that Kovac can get out of there alive. Officer Hayes now has the file open on his computer, and he proceeds to tell Tanaka that him and his officers will deal with it. Again, Tanaka reiterates to him, Officer Hayes, I need you to understand that this man is extremely dangerous. However, Officer Hayes politely says thank you and hangs up the phone. We sit there and watch on the cameras as Officer Hayes tiptoes around the office and gathers 5 more officers, talking to each one of them. They arm up, stack up, and then rush into the interrogation room where Chef is being held with their guns drawn. And guess what? Kovac didn't even flinch. Now, for some reason, we didn't have full audio in this room, but what happened next was some straight up movie type. Listen, one of those officers goes to handcuff Kovac, and we're watching as he lets that officer get close enough to him, grab his left arm. And don't get me wrong, I don't fault these officers in one bit. This level of training is a level that they will never get. If you train, then you've seen the Cavalier move 1,000 times. It's basically an Israeli military gun disarmament. However, what we witnessed this man do was terrifying, because in a split second, he had taken that gun and twisted the officer's body to the point where he had one foot up in the air, using his entire body laid across him for cover. Imagine looking at this on camera. You can see the panic on their faces, and you can tell by their body language that they were intimidated by that one move. Now, Kovac is trying to maneuver himself out of that room. They're shouting and screaming. Officer Hayes, now realizing that he stepped into some stuff that he shouldn't have been messing with, leaves to go get Kid from the holding cell. At this point in time, it's effectively 1-on-4, and then the lights go out in the entire building. Again, we didn't have any sound, but we were able to pick up just a little bit of the sound from the room outside. And to me, it sounded like a whole bunch of people getting their asses whipped. Now get this, when the lights do come back on, those guys are laid out on the floor all over the place. In walks Officer Hayes with Kid. We're sitting there watching all of this play out when this giant black box starts to spin on a holographic screen. Then that box opens, and it has a message directly for Tanaka, taunting him. Day late, dollar short again. Listen when I say you should have seen the anger and rage come across Tanaka's face. He shuts that damn looking glass off, gets up and walks into the bathroom. Rusevich stands up, walks over to the bathroom door and says, calm down, Tanaka. Relax. Stop letting these guys press your buttons. The problem is solved for now. Always looking forward, my friend, never looking backwards. We're always looking forward. Rusevich breaks into this long motivational speech. And honestly, I don't know if it was because he was drunk off his ass from all the drinking he was doing, or because he felt like we really needed the motivation. But he goes on to tell us that when you're in a war, a long protracted war like this, there's going to be battles that you lose. There's going to be little skirmishes that you lose. But at the end of the day, gentlemen, we are going to win this war against Sorkin. He's standing there with this look of determination in his eyes. And me, frankly, I'm just trying to figure out what the hell is going on at this point. Talk about feeling overwhelmed. I've never felt that overwhelmed in my life. We got Sorkin putting my friends on terrorist watch lists, them getting arrested, fake Homeland Security officers torturing them. What the hell? Now looking back on it, part of me wants to say that Rusevich had so much money that it was like a game of chess to him. And to this day, I really do feel that way. Like I was a part of this gigantic chess match being played by two chess masters, one from the side of light, the other from the side of dark, and they didn't care who they threw up against each other to accomplish their goals, but they were going to accomplish their goals. And I started to get confirmation of my feelings when Tanaka finally came out of the restroom. Because Rusevich goes on to the next part of his motivational speech saying, there's always setbacks, always wrinkles. There will always be defeats. It's all baked into the way the universe was created. God designed it all that way. The built-in challenge, the ability to make decisions, and the ability to pay consequences. That's how this game of life is designed. Sorkin is trying to limit the choices we have, and we're doing the same to him. Now I want you to stop for a moment and think about what he was saying. Life truly is a series of choices and consequences, right? When you limit people's choices, you can effectively choose the consequence for them. It was right then and there during that conversation that I knew deep down inside that Rusevich would eventually help us defeat Sorkin. It was probably going to be one of the hardest things we ever did in our life, but I could feel it. We were going to get him, or we were going to die in the process of doing it. Meanwhile, Ben had been doing his best to keep tabs on Scissors. However, a man with his skills disappears and reappears in normal society at will. It wasn't until Ben heard from one of his contacts, Gideon Stern, that he realized Scissors was way off the deep end. Gideon, an Israeli intelligence officer, had a vast network of connections in the world of private military contractors, PMCs. Gideon told Ben that Scissors had been taking jobs, and things weren't going too well. He had become so unpredictable and brutal that no one would hire him again under any circumstances. Gideon explained that on Scissors' last deployment, he missed his extract on purpose, and when they used satellites to find him, he had taken a man hostage, tied up with his arms and legs hooked to 2 horses, and was torturing and killing him. Ben said he could tell Gideon was grieved when he told him this. He said, "Ben, these are very bad people. You and I both know that. But they're still humans. We don't do that kind of stuff. I came to you because Scissors is your friend. But we're going to put him down." Then Gideon went on to explain some of the other stuff that Scissors had been doing. Injecting people on the subways with drugs that gave them a heart attack within 72 hours. Also, he had left a trail of dead prostitutes. "Ben, Scissors is gone. I wanted to give you an option. You can deal with him, or we can. But he has to be dealt with one way or the other." This marked the beginning of a deadly cat-and-mouse game between Ben, Gideon, and Scissors. 3 extremely dangerous men. If only we had known the true extent of Scissors' condition, we might have been able to prevent the tragedy that was about to unfold. However, the relentless attacks from Sorkin and his minions left us with no time to contemplate our actions. We found ourselves in a constant state of reacting to the ever-evolving events, forced to choose from limited options Sorkin presented to us, and ultimately paying the price for those decisions. It saddens me to explain this to you, but there wasn't much conversation about what needed to happen with Scissors. I remember when Ben called me looking for Roger. He was brief with his words. His tone was cold, like he had already come to terms with what needed to be done. And that phone call felt more like a courtesy call than anything. "I've been trying to reach Roger. I'm not getting him. Is everything okay?" "Not really. We have to go to Russia soon. Going to need you and Scissors to come with." "Negative. That's what I called to tell you guys. Scissors is not going to be with us much longer. He's lost it, and there's no coming back for him." I remember thinking before I said these words, he's probably right. But I asked Ben anyway, "You sure there's nothing that can be done?" And his reply, "No, nothing at all. Let me send you something." That's when Ben forwards me the satellite video of Scissors torturing a man with 2 horses in broad daylight, and the FBI footage of him injecting random people on the subway with needles dressed as a homeless person. It was right then and there in that moment that I understood what needed to be done. He was a liability and cannot be trusted in any way. I'll tell Roger. And Ben, be safe. You know how dangerous he is. During that conversation was the first time I heard the name Gideon. Ben explained that he and Gideon were going after him. They had found the safe house where he was staying in Paris. "Safe house?" I asked. "Where did he get that from?" Ben replied he didn't. He took it from the person who was supposed to be safe living there. "I'll reach out to you after it's all done." Then he hung up the phone. Little did any of us know exactly how difficult it would be to actually kill Scissors. We should have known. We worked side by side with him. But their first attempt was in early January in Paris. Ben and Gideon had been watching him for a week as he went back and forth. And watching him from a distance, he seemed calm like any other person walking on the streets. The perfect gray man, completely blending in. Now, according to Ben, he's still not sure how Scissors knew they were watching, but he had to know because of what he did when they finally moved in. The two of them entered the building before sunrise, figured they could get in and out while everyone was asleep. However, somehow he knew they were coming. And as the two of them worked their way up the steps to the third floor, Ben said he had a feeling that things were going to end badly. Sure enough, as they stacked up to move from the stairwell into the hallway that led to his apartment, the moment the door opened, Scissors started shooting. Gideon was hit in the arm, barely making it across the threshold and off to the right for cover. Ben later on told me it was as if Scissors felt them coming for him, and he just knew it. They laid down cover fire, starting to move forward, and Scissors retreated and went back inside. As they positioned themselves outside of that apartment door, Ben looked at Gideon and said, "Man, this just doesn't feel right. He had us pinned down in the hallway. Why would he let us come to this door? This is not right." Ben explained to Gideon that there was no way on this planet that Scissors was still in this apartment. And the only thing that could possibly be behind that door was death. So the two of them headed back towards the steps, and no sooner than they got to the stairwell, they heard someone below heading out the door. Now they're racing to catch up, jumping down flights of stairs and exiting out to the street. Looking left, looking right, he's gone. For a split second, they thought they had lost him until he stepped out of the shadows about 50 yards away and screamed, "Ben, I knew they would come for me, but you came? I could have killed you, Ben, but I didn't. Go home. Let me have some fun." Then he raises his hand in the air and boom. The building that they just exited explodes. Glass shatters, debris falls, their ears are ringing and pounding as they stumble forward, dodging debris. Now, above all the ringing and the noise, Ben could hear Scissors screaming at the top of his lungs, "You should be dead, Ben. You should be dead. Remember, you should be dead." It took Gideon and Ben a few minutes to be able to walk straight. And when they finally got their wits about themselves, turned and looked at the building, it was a horrific sight. Their first confrontation with Scissors had ended in destruction, and it was now clear to both of them that they had no choice but to take him out. There was no turning back. Pause right here for a moment in the story and let me say this to you. I'm doing my best to tell you all of these events in chronological order, but I need you to understand there were so many things happening around us all at the same time that it created this haze around your mind. Some things I know that I've completely forgotten about. Other things are just as clear and crisp as if they were happening right now in this moment. But a few days after we were with Tanaka and Rusevich, Scissors calls Roger and says, "Do you want me dead too? Ben is hunting me down. I thought we were all friends." With anger in his voice, Scissors says, "So this is the thanks I get? Death is my reward?" Then he breaks down crying on the phone. Seconds later, he's laughing. Scissors is having a full mental breakdown. And a man with those types of skills cannot afford to be having mental breakdowns. Roger tells him, "Scissors, buddy, you need to get some help. I know you're hurt, but what happened to those kids? But this isn't going to do you any good. I'll come and see you myself. If you let me, I'll sit down and talk with you. Just let me come see you." "No, you want to kill me. All of you want me dead, so I'll kill you first." It was that statement right there that sealed the deal for Roger concerning Scissors, and he asked Tanaka to help him find him. Tanaka finally got a free day and started to work on the task of finding Scissors. It was lights out for him. There was no place he could run, nowhere he could hide. Within 2 days, Tanaka had somehow located him. Guess where Scissors was? Back in China. I remember this all very distinctly because we discussed if there was any other way to help him. Gideon joined for this video call as well, and Roger wanted to be sure there was no alternative, no hole we could just have him locked up in, no prison cell, no underground cell. However, Gideon made a great point when he told this story. He said that when he was a kid, his parents had a vicious dog. It was protective, loving, but at the same, the dog was crazy. When their dog bit a kid up the street, his father didn't like it. His father didn't like it at all. He punished the dog. But when that dog turned and bit Gideon's little sister, his father took it out back and shot it in the head. Gideon goes on to explain, my father shooting that dog in the head had nothing to do with how he felt about the dog. In fact, he loved that dog. But it had everything to do with the reality of its animalistic nature. We learn from Gideon the true history of Scissors and why there was no choice but to take his life. Gideon reading from classified documents on Scissors. Background: Fareed al-Masar carries the weight of his ancestry on his shoulders. Fareed's childhood was a dark tapestry woven with threads of violence and abuse. His family had been steeped in a long lineage of soldiers and warriors, also become entangled in criminal activity. Scissors' father and older brothers often beat and molested him, leaving deep physical and emotional scars. Despite all of that he went through, he traveled to Egypt and studied at the University of Cairo. And it was there at the University of Cairo where he was first approached by the Mossad. Then Gideon went on to his mission profile. Aged 20 to 24, Scissors spent the majority of his time developing expertise in surveillance and reconnaissance, where he was going undercover gathering information on terrorist organizations in the Middle East. It was during these early missions where he really stood out. Then, at age 25, Scissors single-handedly infiltrated a group of Al-Qaeda agents in Egypt. Their plan was to pull off a series of bombings inside of Israel. And he single-handedly neutralized that entire cell. 2 years after that, they put him in Lebanon, where he infiltrated Hezbollah. While on that mission, he assassinated 2 high-value targets inside of Hezbollah. And nobody figured out it was him that did it. According to Gideon, Scissors single-handedly handed Hezbollah one of the greatest setbacks they had ever experienced. Now pause right here, let me say something to you. We all knew Scissors through Ben. And to be clear with you, we knew Scissors was a badass, but we had no clue how much of a badass he was. Get this. Before he left the Mossad, his last mission was security. This diplomat goes to Jordan. As they move around the city, people start to act strangely. 10 minutes later, that diplomat's caravan comes under attack. According to this diplomat, Scissors was solely responsible for saving his life. Gideon went on to explain to us all that having one of their most well-trained operatives out in the field going rogue was not an option. Even though he was no longer a part of Mossad, any negative actions that he took could be misconstrued and associated directly with their nation. So they were taking him out, one way or the other. According to Gideon, there was direct authorization from his government to take Scissors out. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to come to terms with something and just move on as fast as possible? That is where we all were in that moment. It was going to happen whether we liked it or not, and there was nothing that we could do. Gideon then shares a feed with us showing Scissors boarding a plane in Chile. Wait, hold on a second, Roger said. I thought he was in China. That's what he wanted you guys to think. In actuality, he's in Chile. We watched as that plane took off, and then the engines exploded. I'm speaking for myself and myself only. I can't tell you how anyone else felt in that moment, but as we watched Scissors' plane crash, I couldn't help but remember everything that we've been through. It was one of the most surreal moments I've ever had in my life, and it constantly replays over and over at night when I'm asleep. We watched him die, and then the conversation turned right back to Sorkin. It was a few days after the death of Scissors where we finally heard back from Chef and Kid, and they wanted help finding Kovac. The police were looking for him as well. Those two wanted to get to him before they did. And the only person that I knew that had the skills to track down Kovac was Tanaka. The problem that I was running into was that Tanaka needed some persuading. You see, his top priority was dealing with the black box. So when I reached out to him and told him what was going on, he said, listen, I understand that your friends want to find this guy, but at the end of the day, we need to deploy to Russia and take care of the black box. That's when I had to break it down for him and say, listen, Tanaka, we operate as a team, and if one of our teammates is in danger, nobody's going to move. The sooner we resolve this issue, the sooner we can deal with the problems in Russia. Will you please help us resolve this issue so we can move forward? Like I said, it took a little bit of persuading, but finally Tanaka reached out to Chef and Kid. Now stop right here for a moment and let me say this. The technology should be rolling out now into public's eyes, showing you what government and wealthy private interests have access to. I want to be clear with you. What you are seeing right now is nothing compared to what Tanaka had access to. Facial recognition technology, combined with access to every airport, bus, train, rental car, both real-time data and 7 days prior. He tracked Kovac across red light cameras, ring doorbells, commercial building security systems, to a private airport and on board a flight to London. Then, with the use of AI technology, he narrowed down the aliases that Kovac was using and found the hotel he booked himself into in downtown London. While simultaneously doing that, Tanaka's AI that he called Athena was processing the fastest route for Chef and Kid to get to his location while simultaneously problems and issues that delayed and stifled his actions while he was in London. A series of what seemed like random events that limited his mobility, from his room key not working to his room getting cleaned and all of his stuff being taken downstairs and locked in the office safe, while simultaneously changing the schedule in the system to where a night manager who would have had the only key was given the day off, effectively leaving him with no access to his room and only the cash he had on hand. Now get this, we received constant updates on his location, where he went, who he met with, and the craziest thing about it all was Kovac was not carrying a cell phone. He was being tracked by the microchips inside the cash that he was carrying in his pocket. Yes, his money was being traced in real time. And on top of that, the people of interest whom he had been in contact were being tracked by various means as well. Some of them were being tracked by nanoparticles in their bloodstreams, while others were being tracked by their credit cards and debit cards. Every time I received an update from Tanaka, it was more and more terrifying. As quickly I came to learn that there is no such thing as privacy anymore. When Chef and Kid finally reached London, I was with Ben, Roger, and Rusevich, and Tanaka and his AI were in full control of the mission. I need you to understand something. Athena, the AI, devised the plan for the two of them to wait for Kovac in his hotel room, led them straight to the door, unlocked it, then turned on that TV inside the room and gave them a real-time live feed of all of his movements. There was only one stop that Kovac made that was of any real interest. This was at a coffee shop where he met a man, his face being run through the system, and it came back as Vincent Blackthorne. Never heard of the guy, because I had never heard of the guy. Born 1975 in the East End of London. By his early 30s, Vincent had established himself as one of the most prominent crime bosses in London, controlled a vast network of illegal operations throughout the city. Over time, his criminal empire caught the attention of every government agency. However, instead of those agencies deciding to take him down and stop him, they found it more advantageous to work with him. Vincent had access to valuable information, resources, and connections that could prove useful in their covert operations. Now, get this. In exchange for Vincent working with them, he got a few concessions. reduced surveillance, every now and then legal immunity. And in exchange for Vincent being allowed to run amok and do whatever the hell he wanted to, whenever they needed his assistance to fight against terrorism or international crime syndicate or any other threat that the government itself deemed serious, he had to do it. Understand the situation. Kovac is sitting there having coffee with an underground crime boss who worked with the government. Vincent goes on to begin questioning Kovac if he had gotten any information on the whereabouts of Lily. Now pause right here for a moment. Let me bring you up to speed. If you don't know who Lily is, I don't blame you, because back then we didn't have a name for her. She just so happened to catch a ride with us leaving that underground base in China. But Lily is the pregnant woman who left with us from China and came back to the US. The woman we took from Sorkin's lab. Kovac goes on to explain to Vincent that he did not have any leads on her whatsoever. In fact, that he was compromised. He was going to regroup and try again. This time he will go after the leader of our group, talking about Roger. They talk for a few more seconds, then Kovac heads back to the hotel. We watch as the cameras track his every move into the hotel lobby, up the elevator, and then to his room. The minute he opens the door, they had him. Chef knocks him across the back of the head and they tie him up. And when he finally wakes up with a gun in his face, he's given two options: tell Chef where his sister was or die. The words that came out of Kovac's mouth next were shocking, and they sounded like a lie, like he was saying anything he could to stay alive. However, those words were instantly confirmed by the Ring doorbell at his sister's house. You see, according to the police, there was no data on her doorbell because it was dead, but the AI somehow pulled up the footage. Kovac told Chef that yes, he went to his sister's house, and he was with another man. While that guy went to the front door, he broke in the back door. The mission was to find Chef, not to hurt or kill his sister. Kovac watched as the man roughed his sister up, but when he pulled his gun and grabbed her by the hair and threatened to kill her in front of the kids, Kovac said he wasn't having it. So he shot him in the head, then took Chef's sister and kids to a safe house, waited for Chef to arrive, and that's when he began the process of setting him up. The cameras did in fact confirm that another man went to the front door, and it also confirmed that Chef's sister walked out of the front door with the kids and voluntarily got into a car with Kovac. He goes on to explain to Chef that if he had his cell phone, he could prove it and show Chef a live feed of his sister and the kids. So Kid went downstairs and got the phone, and sure enough, there was a live feed with audio showing his sister and her kids playing in the front yard of this house. Kovac spoke through the speaker, and she responded asking if he was okay. Now listen to me. In my time of dealing with Sorkin and his operatives, man, we dealt with some pretty rough people. But I've never seen anything like this. The entire situation collectively blew our minds, and we had to know the truth. So Kovac starts to spill all the beans, and it turns out that we all had grudges against Sorkin. But Kovac's grudge was way worse than ours. It was personal. So personal that he would do anything to hurt Sorkin. Kovac goes into the story about how his wife was killed by one of Sorkin's assets, and that his 18-year-old son was kidnapped. And he explains that what happened to Chef's sister was him trying to get his son back. Sorkin offered him a deal that if he found Lily, that he would free his son. So Kovac, with no other options, took the deal. And his contact into Sorkin's organization was Vincent. He goes on to explain to Chef and Kid that he had just met with Vincent and told him that he was going after another member of our team. Kovac goes on and said, listen, I've killed a lot of people, but I never killed a woman and child, and I never will kill a woman and child. But I need to get my son back. You have what I need to do that. Give me something to work with. My son is going to die. Now, as Kovac is talking, Tanaka chimes into the situation, taking a break from working on the servers, asking if everything was going all right, and realizing that the AI had done its job. He looks at the situation and says, so why is this guy still alive? He says, we have what we need. Let's kill him, move on, and get to Russia. I need you to understand at this point, Kovac is clinging on to every word, trying to find leverage. And he says, Russia? You looking for Sorkin's operations there? Which one? The paper tiger, the black box, the falling knife, the blunt edge? Listen, we had heard about the black box, but the others, we hadn't heard of any of those. And that's when Kovac begins to lay out how his beef with Sorkin started. He goes on to explain that his country had been under a series of cyber attacks, and he was a part of the investigation. As he dug deeper and deeper, he realized that the cyber attacks were being blamed on the Russian government, but in fact, it was forces loyal to Sorkin inside the Russian government, along with private industry on Russian soil being funded by Sorkin. According to Kovac, he reported his findings to his superiors, and nothing happened. And when he kept looking into it, he found his wife dead 6 months later, and his son was still missing. Then Sorkin's agents reached out and explained that they needed a job done. Kovac went on and on talking about the research that he had into Sorkin's organization from his intelligence job in Montenegro. He explained that the Paper Tiger was a Sorkin agent who was going to run for president of Russia. The Fallen Knife was a program that, when implemented, would have foreign operatives sabotage vital infrastructure inside of the Russian homeland and blame it on the Americans, while simultaneously sabotaging infrastructure inside of the American homeland and blaming it on the Russians. He went on and on about what he knew about Sorkin's organization, to the point where it became painfully obvious that no matter how angry Chef was, we were not killing this guy. However, what we needed to figure out was the best way to use him. Tanaka said, well, if you know all of that, then guess what? You should know where he is, right? Kovac goes on to say he had a list of 7 locations that Sorkin was using as safe houses. But they, meaning his government, were never able to pinpoint him. That Sorkin was constantly on the move. The next thing I knew, Chef and Kid were headed back to Texas to get Chef's sister, and Kovac was coming to a meeting with Roger and Rusevich. Operation Black Sun was born out of the meeting with Roger, Rusevich, Kovac, and Tanaka, a comprehensive plan to take down Sorkin's entire network for good. The problem was, we needed help. With the information from Kovac, we will be able to find plenty of people who wanted Sorkin and his network destroyed. Many of the people Kovac shared had no clue that Sorkin was behind the events that changed their lives forever. Well, with the help of Tanaka and his AI, they found out the truth, and they found it out relatively quickly. Our team was ragged and rough around the edges. We were just runners and gunners, following the trails that we could find. Once we were absorbed into Rusevich's network, we were on even footing with Sorkin. Dare I say, a step ahead of him. Then Roger, who I hadn't seen for weeks, called a meeting, and we were all flown to Rusevich's island. Yes, he has his own private island, and it was amazing. When we landed, we had no clue what we were walking into, nor did we have a grasp of the magnitude of Operation Black Sun. We boarded jeeps and rode towards what looked like an 8,000 square foot house. But when we pulled into the garage, the grade sloped downward, and the next thing we knew, we were driving underneath the house. Once inside, Rusevich's private security led us to an elevator. And when we came out, it was an operations hub with 30 people working, conference rooms. Roger, Tanaka, and Kovac were already there. When I tell you this was something to behold, it was something out of a movie. With real-time surveillance by both CCTV and drones. I had no clue that civilians had access to this type of technology. We were led into the conference room and offered a seat. Ben, Chef, Kid, and I marveled at what we were seeing when Roger walked in and sat down, starting off with an apology. He said he was sorry that he had gotten us all into this mess with Sorkin. And looking back on it all, had he known it would lead to this, he would have just let it be, stayed out of it altogether. But there was no turning back at this point, something we all agreed to. It was right then and there that he told us that now we were officially a part of Rusevich's organization and had access to everything, every piece of technology, every piece of intel, everything. Ben, concerned about what he was hearing, quickly asked Roger, "What is it going to cost us?" Ben articulated his concern, saying, "Maybe we need to slow down a little bit. It doesn't make sense to sell our souls to one devil trying to kill another devil." That's when Roger explained that we could leave whenever we wanted to. In fact, any of us were free to leave right now. And moving forward, we will be under the protection of Rusevich's organization. However, he explained that once we left this room and moved forward, it would be no turning back until Sorkin was dead. With that, he asked if we agree, then scanned the room, looking at the faces of everyone around. And when no one objected, he said, "Awesome, follow me." Exited that conference room and went into another room with movie theater seating, but no movie theater screen on the wall. There were about 25 other people already seated, and when we took our seat, Rusevich walked in and began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have been assembled here for a mission briefing. Each of you already understand the target. Each of you have your own reasons for being here. What we do moving forward will be a joint effort, and together we will accomplish this goal. Some of you may not make it out of this alive, and those risks have been explained to you ahead of time. Your families will be well compensated per your agreements that you signed. But before we start this presentation, I would like to introduce some men to you. Roger, Steve, Ben, Chef, Kid, please stand." Sheepishly, we all stood to our feet, and Rusevich said, "These 5 men have already inflicted major damage to Sorkin's operations. They did it alone, and with very little help. Just sheer tenacity and willpower. They are a shining example of what a few good men can do in the face of evil. Together, we're going to completely dismantle Sorkin's organization. We will break him on all sides, infiltrate every nook and cranny, and burn everything, I mean everything, to the ground, forcing him to flee. And when everything is on fire around him and he's running for cover, he will come to us. We won't have to look for him. He's going to run directly to us." Then he started the briefing on Operation Black Sun, a fully AI optimized plan to take down Sorkin's operation. When the holograms began to play and showed exactly what was about to happen, I personally had a panic attack. It explained that Operation Black Sun is a fully war-gamed scenario targeting the networks of Sorkin, his brother, and his son. The primary objective was decapitating their power structure, and then a secondary objective was the destruction of their operative networks across the world. And the final objective, a series of events to eliminate their key players in an attempt to prevent the resurrection of their organization. Listen to me, this plan was absolutely insane. Hacking Sorkin's communication networks, and if that couldn't be done, destroying them all together. Targeting his major illicit financial networks with cyber attacks, discrediting Sorkin's political figures around the world, and partnering with other rival organizations that would swoop in and do corporate takeovers of Sorkin's companies as it all unfolded. This was a massive operation, and it all started with Kovac, Ben, Chef, and Kid. Part of Kovac's deal, in exchange for his help, was that Rusevich would free his son. But in order to pull that off, they needed to know his location, which hinged on Vincent believing that Kovac had Lily and the baby. The plan was to set up an exchange, and when Vincent and his team arrived, a third party would kidnap Lily, that third party being us. In all the confusion, Kovac was to kidnap Vincent, take him and interrogate him. Now let me say this to you, at a time like this, in the movies, they would make it seem like it was this grandiose moment, like this huge event, with people talking, high emotions, but in reality, you don't have much time to think. Before we knew it, Operation Black Sun was in full swing. Kovac, Ben, and Lily were on their way to London. Chef and Kid, with a team of 5 of the men, were on their way to Russia. I, plus a team of 4 of the men, were on our way to Italy, where Sorkin's brother was attending an event. Our job was to shadow him, and as all hell broke loose, if we saw an opportunity to take him, we would. Understand, based on all the things that were about to happen, Sorkin had no choice but to activate whatever contingency plans he had in place for his family. Listen to me. When things started happening, they happened fast. Much faster than we could have ever imagined. It's early May. We find ourselves outside Barcelo Aaron Mantegra Hotel, watching Sorkin's brother arrive for a convention. Now, his security was surprisingly lax considering who his brother was. As I talked to Roger on the comms, he believed that it was due to pure arrogance that it was this way. I remember him saying, "This son of a bitch thinks he can't be touched. We gonna find out. We'll see." The convention was 2 days long, and we waited for Kovac and the other teams to be in place and ready before we made our move. We were about to hit Sorkin from every angle, and once it started, it wouldn't stop. Over in London, Kovac and Lily were meeting with Vincent and Hackney over at one of his warehouses. And when that kicked off, it didn't go as expected at all. Kovac and Vincent met to exchange Lily, and as it turned out, Sorkin's other operatives had planned to not only kill Kovac, but to kill Vincent as well. The second Lily stepped out of the van, his operatives started shooting, taking out one of the guys that was on Kovac's team and several on Vincent's team. And luckily for Kovac, Big Ben was in rare form. Not only did he take out Sorkin's two operatives stationed on a nearby roof, but he and his team stormed the warehouse, grabbing Lily, Kovac, and Vincent, who had been injured in the shootout. And just like that, Operation Black Sun was a go. While they were taking Vincent away for interrogation, our team was killing the power to the entire area in Italy, infiltrating the hotel and going after Sorkin's brother. However, his team was more crafty than we anticipated, and the visible security was far outnumbered by the plainclothes security. He ended up having so many men with him that when the lights went out, it seemed as if half the damn hotel was working for his brother. We had no choice but to abandon that mission, fall back, and continue doing surveillance. There was no way we were going to get to him. While we were falling flat in Italy, Chef, Kid, and Tanaka were leading the team into the Black Box building in Russia. And those events didn't go as planned either. From all the intel, the Black Box was a group of hackers, non-military, untrained geeks. Well, that turned out to be far from the truth. They knocked the power out in the entire area and entered through the underground parking lot, only to be immediately met with resistance, private security of the finest type, advanced weapon systems, H&K X9 Scorpions with armor-piercing rounds. And when the shooting started, boy, did it start. What should have taken them 3 minutes to get through the parking garage area took 10 minutes. And their 9-member team was dwindled down to 7 by the time they entered the building. Elevators had been shut down, and they had to fight their way up 10 flights of steps to get to the floor where the Black Box operated, only to be greeted by more private security. Imagine the scene. They open the door to the 10th floor and are met with a hail of bullets. Listen to me, they had to use a riot shield to get through the doorway, and even then, they barely made it through. It wasn't until Tanaka literally decided to go through one of the walls that they got the upper hand and made it to the server rooms. And I need you to understand, what was supposed to be a quiet operation in Russia had become loud. Very, very loud. Tanaka needed 10 minutes to upload a virus to the Black Box servers. And as they stood there waiting, he laughed and smiled. Well, looks like we're not going out the way we came back in. Looking out of the windows, they could see the police lights in the distance heading in that direction. Later, Chef explained to me that during that time period, he was coming to terms with the fact that he was going to be in the Russian prison system for the rest of his life. A few moments later, Tanaka said it was done, and he pulled out what looked like a small globe from his bag and started pressing buttons on the sides. Then he explained to everyone that they needed to get out of there and get to the roof for their extraction, that their ride would be there in about 6 minutes. When Kid asked him exactly what the device was, he told him it was sort of like an EMP, but it packed an extra punch. And as their team moved back out into the hallway and towards the steps, they could hear the police entering the stairwell. And looking down, they saw a huge SWAT team working its way up the steps. So they headed to the roof and barricaded the door behind them. Now, on the roof, everyone was looking at Tanaka, wondering how in the hell they were going to get out of there. But he was busy programming something on his watch. Minutes later, a gigantic drone descends from the sky. Everyone is standing there completely shocked as Tanaka just hops on this thing. Kid later explained to me that it was the coolest but most terrifying thing he'd ever seen. He said it looked like a sleek helicopter but without propellers on top. And it had a propulsion system with rotating thrusters that changed directions. According to him, the minute everyone was on board, it shot straight up into the air. Then paused for a few seconds and alerted them to buckle up before it shot off. In Kid's exact words, he said, "Man, if I saw something like that flying around, I would swear on my life it was a UFO. There would be nothing anyone could tell me to make me think anything different. It looked like a freaking UFO." Now, looking back at the building as they flew away, Chef described it as lightning bolts going off inside the windows of the 10th floor. And according to Tanaka, there was no way anything electronic in that building would ever turn on again. Not a light, not a TV, not an electrical circuit. The entire building would not work. Now pause right here for a moment. Let me say this. Just as Athena, the AI, had predicted, these series of events had Sorkin's team on edge. His brother was on the move, but Sorkin himself didn't budge, not an inch. That was until Vincent started talking during the interrogation. And I need you to understand something. With all this fancy technology in the world, when it comes to extracting information, there's nothing like pain and death. To kill a man and bring him back to life over and over again. Taking him across the threshold into the spirit realm where he has to face the consequences of his life actions. Then yanking him back out of that realm into life. After Vincent's heart stopped beating for the 5th time, he was willing to give up all the information. The location of Kovac's son. The location of Sorkin's right-hand man, the person we had never heard of before. But according to Vincent, if we wanted Sorkin, all we had to do was follow his trail right to him. And I need you to understand, even while all this information was being extracted, Sorkin's casinos in Romania were getting hit. Their cash trucks hijacked. The money, not stolen, no, it was burned. Millions of dollars that were used to pay all of his operatives in the field dried up overnight. And as that was happening, Athena was sending out propaganda to every active and inactive PMC. The videos of Sorkin's trucks full of cash on fire. By the evening of the 4th day, panic started to set in across the intelligence communities across the world. They realized that many of the government-sponsored entities that they had inside of their countries were not only just at war, but could start a greater war. And it was exactly as Athena predicted. Funding for some of Sorkin's largest entities started to dry up overnight. And even then, we still had nothing on his location. The assault was in full swing when Rusevich gave the green light to send the team to extract Kovac's son. According to Rusevich, Sorkin had been caught off guard. He was off balance, but he wouldn't stay that way for long. Move on, so we had to move now to get Kovac's son. Now listen, I can't really be angry as to what happened next. I tried to be, I really did, because Roger isolated me. I didn't have a lot of real-time information as to what was happening and how it was happening. I was only picking up little bits and pieces as things unfolded. But what I did know was that teams were dispersed to sabotage every aircraft in Sorkin's fleet except for one. Listen, I might just be venting here a little bit, and I understand there's no way that I could have known everything. It wasn't feasible for any one person to know the entire plan. Hell, I don't think it was possible, because Athena was changing and adapting to situations as they unfolded. But I was off following Sorkin's brother, while everyone else was off on these amazing missions. In that moment, I started to feel like Roger and Rusevich didn't trust me, like I did something wrong. Nonetheless, I'm following Sorkin's brother And this guy is jet setting around the freaking world. He travels from Italy to Munich to Barcelona. And every time he lands, he's increasing his security forces. Now, I can't tell you what happened in Barcelona was a result of him being offended or if it was just panic on his part. But I watched Sorkin's brother as he lost it at the airfield, took out a gun and shot one of the security guards in the head right there on the tarmac. It was clear that the pressure was building. But you should have seen the reaction once he drove off. The men left behind to deal with the mess, they weren't happy about it at all. During my next call with Roger, I told him what I saw and decided to mention how I felt about being isolated and on this tracking mission. Understand the two of us have known each other since we were kids. And I never really heard him talk like this. He said, "Steven, are you serious right now? You think you're there because I don't trust you? Are you out of your fucking mind? You're there because I trust you the most." We don't have eyes on Sorkin. All we have is his brother. And I know when and if the time is right, I can trust you 1,000% to do the right thing. And if you have to go get him, I know you'll go through hell and high water to get him. I put you there so I can focus here. I've never shown you more trust than I'm showing you right now. Do you understand? You know, as I sat there thinking about the situation, he was right. This was our only true indicator as to what was happening with Sorkin himself. It was his family. My response? I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. He cut me off long before I could finish and said, "No need. I thought you understood. If I were in your shoes, I could have doubt too. But we're almost there. We almost have him. We just need him to move. Trust me, it's working. When he moves, we have him." Hours after that conversation, Tanaka launched a cyber attack across the locations where Sorkin's operations were running. And we're not talking about little computer viruses. No, these were pinpointed power outages that affected specific locations, causing server resets. And during those server resets, Tanaka was uploading all kinds of viruses to Sorkin's computers. By the time they moved on the prison in Romania where Kovac's son was being held, Sorkin's entire network was under attack. Brazil, Tasmania, India. There was blood in the water. And thanks to Athena, and governments around the world started the process of regulating, defunding, and taxing Sorkin's NGOs. Now, using a combination of the location given by Vincent and the power of Athena, they were able to discover exactly where Kovac's son was being held. The assault team made their way to the location. And understand, black sites are beyond maximum security. And in this case, there was little to no intel on the interior of this location, other than what Athena was able to find, which was minimum. So the approach they decided to take was overwhelming force. A team of 15 men, including Kovac and Ben, went to the mountains. The black site was built into the side of a mountain with one road in and one entrance. And together, Kovac and Ben made that door go boom. The problem was, moving inside, they found themselves in a maze of corridors. And without the sonar tech from Tanaka, they would have been lost. When they placed it on the ground and turned it on, the entire facility was mapped out. And it was a freaking nightmare. Giant steel metal doors. And on the other side, well-fortified guard booths. The team found themselves stunned by the fact that once inside, they met no resistance. But the fact of the matter was, this prison wasn't built to stop anyone from getting in. It was built to stop the people on the inside from getting out. And because of the way it was designed, there was no need for anyone to come from behind the steel doors. You had to come to them. This team of 15 men found themselves stuck with no way to move forward. That's when Kovac reached out to Tanaka and had him start working on overriding the systems. The problem was that every moment they waited gave the men inside more time to prepare for the battle ahead. However, Athena had a trick up her sleeve. Once inside the system, she opened every cell door on the 3rd floor, letting all the inmates roam free, forcing them to divide their forces before unlocking the doors for them to go inside. After that, it was a fight getting inside those doors and down the steps and finding Kovac's son. The elevators were shut off to keep the guards from moving from floor to floor quickly. And that team had to fight their way down 5 levels of stairs, flashbangs, thermites. They started with a team of 15 men, and by the time they got down to the 3rd level, it was only 8 of them. And as they emerged on that level, it was pure chaos. Fighting, stabbing, guards being hung from the stairwells as they moved around looking for Kovac's son. Then out steps this giant Arab, 6'8", all muscle, and begins to speak. Are you here to kill us? The room goes quiet as everyone turns their attention to Kovac and his team. And Kovac's response was all they needed to hear. I'm here for my son. If you want freedom, you should take it now while you can. Right then and there was a mad rush as all those inmates flooded the stairs, the weapons rooms, and began to leave the facility. And the only one that didn't leave the room was the giant Arab. He just sat back down and waited as the madness ensued. Ben and this giant Arab catch each other's eyes and they look at each other, a moment of recognition. But then they proceed to keep moving, calling out Kovac's son's name. They find him laying there on the ground, bleeding from a wound on the backside of his head. Other than bleeding from the back of his head, he looked fine, muscular, lean, strong. You could tell he had adapted well to the environment. As they moved to extract him, Kovac struggled to carry his weight. And the giant Arab said, I'll get him out of here in exchange for a ride off this mountain. Kovac's immediate response was no. But Ben looked at him again, scanning his memory, trying to place his face. Titan, is that you? The two of them stared at each other for a moment. And he said, that is you. I thought you were dead. And without any hesitation, Ben says he's coming with us. And that giant of a man grabs Kovac's son, throws him across his shoulder as they fight their way back out of the facility. The way out was just as chaotic as the way in. Now inmates had guns, body armor, and instead of leaving, they were killing each other. However, as Titan stepped out in front of the team, even men with shotguns just cleared the way and started following him. They worked their way back up the stairs and outside. And that's when it got bad. I'm talking about terribly bad. The inmates outside have weapons and they're swarming the helicopters trying to get on. Until Titan walks up. The fear this man instilled in people was unlike anything they had ever seen. When they were finally in the air, it turned out that Ben and Titan, whose real name was Zarif al-Mansour, had worked a few missions together in Kazakhstan. In fact, the last time they had seen each other was in Kazakhstan. When Ben asked how he got there, Titan went on to say that he was captured during one of the black operations, and they dropped him off in the mountain. He had been there for 5 years. Zarif looked at Kovac and said, your son came here as a boy, and he leaves as a man. He won't die, he'll be fine. While that mission was a success and it seemed like our winning streak wasn't going to stop, Sorkin's contingency plans kicked in that targeted one of Rusevic's members of his board of directors in Lyon, France. The man just went out for lunch and lost both of his legs. Then more bombings targeting members of Rusevic's organization around the world, key players who managed his business. However, that was all the bullets Sorkin had left, just pure terroristic violence. His ability to hack was gone, and his ability to pay his operatives was in doubt. Governments and members of his organization were starting to abandon ship. And that's when we went for his number 2 man. Not to catch him, but to force him to run to Sorkin. And boy, did he run straight to him. And while he was running in the direction of Sorkin, his brother was headed to a private island. There was no following him there. And all we could do was ensure that we controlled Sorkin's options at this point. He was in a panic, and the big bad wolf moved. And guess where he was the entire time? The entire time. He was hiding right there in Paris, a genius location. One of the hotels that he owned was a front. His house was built into the backside of this freaking hotel. And when Sorkin moved, there was Athena's facial recognition technology that caught his face and his right-hand man, who turned out to be a little bit more than just his second in charge. This was his lover. And yes, I said his lover. It never crossed any of our minds. But the way they embraced each other as they were spotted on the cameras made it clear. And they were scared. And that right there was a single misstep that led Sorkin right into the trap. He had only one jet left, and he didn't use it. Sorkin decided to take his yacht. It was a glorious moment to see our enemy flee his strong